When did you wreck someone who completely underestimated you? I was at a conference when I was about 24 or 25. As I was waiting near the front of the room, I was approached by a guy I'd never met who said something like, "Son, let me give you some free advice. You want to be successful in this industry, pay attention to the next presenter." I was the next presenter. There is a classy or thoughtful way to do this, and this d-bag, condescending way to do it. I promise this guy was not trying to be helpful. He was trying to be an awesome industry insider who could talk down to people. There was a great internship posted on my law school job board. I applied, did all the right steps and stuff, didn't even get an interview. 6 months later, a similar offer is posted, and I apply again. This time, someone from my school's career office calls and says, "We can't send someone with your credentials to that prestigious employer because this is a really important relationship for the school." I apply on my own, get the interview, and get the position. The school finds out I got the internship, wants to set up a meeting to make sure expectations are set correctly, and I politely tell them to pound sand. Now I have a full-time job with that company. I am underestimated every Friday at the arcade. Just because I'm 30, slightly chubby, and dressed in a suit, it doesn't mean that I can't beat a couple of teenagers' butts in Dance Dance Revolution. My girlfriend's dad was helping me tune up my truck. He's a real domineering type of guy and likes to be bossy, so I was just letting him, quote, educate me on vehicle maintenance. Towards the end, I was sitting in the truck while he plugged the wires back up. He wanted me to turn it over, and nothing. He tried again, and I turned the key again, nothing. At this point, I hopped out and without a word plugged the wires correctly into the cap and started the truck no problem. To this day, I'm the only person he doesn't try to educate and boss around. In short, Google is a great friend. I'm blonde with blue eyes, 6 foot tall, and I live in the US. I speak fluent Japanese and work in the automotive industry. It's strategic to send me to meetings with Japanese executives, and at some point during the meeting I invariably begin speaking Japanese. Immediately, everyone loses their mind. What constitutes losing your mind in a serious high-level Japanese business meeting? Because TV has taught me that those things are pretty stony-faced, and I'm imagining the reaction being a few seconds of slightly surprised blinking. But then again, I'm only going off a media stereotype, so please let me know if something else would go down. I got told by some of my teachers not to apply to top UK universities because I wouldn't get in. I got into UCL and I'm doing just fine. Take that, you pencil-membered teachers. Same sort of thing happened to me. I was an above-average student, minded my own business for the most part. Needless to say, the guidance counselor had no idea who I was because I was never in the office for any reason. I was a good egg. She looks at my target schools, it was fricking UMass and a few smaller options. Not exactly shooting for the moon. But nope, she was like, "No way that will happen, are you joking? Have you considered 2-year community school?" Playing Trivial Pursuit at Christmas with my ex-girlfriend's family. Most of them and their partners are teachers with a couple of college professors thrown in. They looked down on me as I worked in a manual labor job. I won and then drank all the Baileys. I hope the end of this was more of a, "You have won our respect. Come and drink with us as an educated man," and not, "Frick you, motherfuckers! I won! I'm gonna drink me some Baileys," before crapping into the pipes they were definitely smoking. I'm pretty laid back. I wear business casual clothes to work, like nice dresses, flat shoes, but no suits, perhaps heels now and then. I introduced myself to a new employee in our department that works right next to mine. I realized his attitude was a bit condescending as we talk, and as I start to walk away, he asks, "Are you one of the work-study students?" I smiled and realized he thought I was a student worker, and that explained his attitude. I just laughed and said, "No, I'm Dr. Damsel, but it's great that you think I look young enough to be an undergrad." My girlfriend used to call her uncle or other relatives to hang up lamps and do other related stuff like drilling holes in our place. She did so because she thought I had no idea how to do that. One day, I told her, "Now I have to do all of that. I should have kept it safe and secret." I was at a prestigious wrestling tournament when I made it to the finals. The guy I was wrestling in the finals was bragging that he'd get the fastest pin in the tournament finals. Well, lo and behold, 1 minute 25 into the first period, he did get pinned the fastest in the finals of the tournament. Not exactly on point, but I became a professor at a university that wouldn't accept me as a student. Teaching classes I wasn't deemed good enough to take when I was younger was gratifying. I'd been working as a data entry clerk at night in a medical practice. The new business manager found out that I knew bookkeeping. She assigned me to balance the checkbooks. None had been balanced since she first started there. I thought the doctors were fools, but I balanced them and gave them back to her. Then she threatened to fire me if I ever mentioned to anyone how long the books had not been balanced. Wrong-o. I was a temp, and at the best of times I didn't care if I left a job or not. I spent the rest of my shift typing up a complete report on everything that I knew was wrong in the practice, from handling patients' appointments to posting payments. I think it was over 5 pages long. Then I made copies of my report and dropped them in the doctor's mailboxes at the hospitals that they covered. That way she wouldn't know that I'd stuck a knife in her back. I offered the doctors 3 options. First, I disappear and they forget the whole thing. Or I hire a business manager on commission and leave. Or I take over and I'd straighten the place out, and when it ran right, I'd leave then. I'd given them my name and number. Then I went home and started sorting what stayed and what went with me. I didn't even bother to call in the next shift or the one after that. Then I got a call from the head of the practice asking for a meeting. I met with all 5 to 7 doctors. I offered to stick around until they could hire a real business manager. The next day, I was the manager and she was unemployed. Nobody threatens me. I hated that job, but I did it just out of sheer spite towards her. I was at a new high school. My English teacher gave the class a take-home PSAT for practice. I handed it in and got a 1450 out of 1600. She accused me of cheating and lying. Eventually, we left it at, well, let's see how he goes on the real test. I got 1510 out of 1600, the highest in the school. F that witch, it still feels good 25 years later. I was considered the dumb one out of my group of friends at school. I'm the only one who obtained a college education, moved away from our hometown, got a decent job, and didn't get anyone pregnant. Go me! My dad used to tell me all the time not to bother with higher learning because I'd just waste my money by failing everything. I graduated with honors, and Dad still tells everyone how much of a loser I am. Oh, this one always makes me smile. When I was in high school, just about to graduate, we all had to go see the careers advisor at school. For a little bit of backstory, it's important to know that I'm physically disabled but not mentally impaired in any way. Anyway, when I went to see her, she told me that perhaps I shouldn't aim for university as it was going to be a challenge with my educational deficits. I asked her what she meant and she said, well, your disability, of course. I very politely explained that my disability has had no impact on my mental cognition at all, and she said, I don't think you're right. I think you need to consider the fact that you'll never work or live a normal life. These days, I'm at university studying to be a social worker. Yes, I know it's not something incredibly academic, but I made it to university. Screw that ignorant careers advisor. I don't know if there are more of these to come, but we're getting a fairly decent volume of awful school career advisors so far. I mean, I know they're meant to help students manage their expectations, but this one felt really ignorant. I once was driving my sister's Geo Metro because my car broke down. It has like pink flower stickers all over it. Some high school tough guy in his raised pickup truck cut me off badly on the back road. I honked my horn and he pulled over. I followed suit. He gets out and starts walking towards my car. I proceed to untangle myself from this tiny car and I step out. The look on his face when he sees my 6'3", 280-pound frame was definitely worth the hour-and-a-half drive in that tiny piece of crap. This woman asks if I was strong enough to put some boxes on a shelf, so I picked her up so she could put the damn box up there by herself. But remember to turn yourself into Ryan Gosling first. I repeat, if you do not look like Ryan Gosling before you do this, then it's just an unwanted advance. 5'2", 110 pounds. In high school, I was on drumline. I played bass first, then snare, then tenors. Decided to try out for Carolina Crown on tenors. Guys kept making comments, she won't be able to keep up. She probably can't even play. I was the second best player trying out on tenors. While they were all whining about not being able to do stuff, I was just beasting it out and not saying a word. Frickers. I'm small, not fricking physically challenged. The frick does being small have to do with playing? I did a stay one night at college thing and we started playing Guitar Hero, where everyone was strangers. The self-diagnosed GH-obsessed guy in college failed the song and passed the guitar to me, the quiet girl. During the intro he said, sorry, it's still on expert mode. Then I proceeded to kill it. They said it was because I was Asian. I tend to agree. That happened to me too. Before I was good friends with my floor mates, a bunch of them were playing Guitar Hero 3 on the couch. One guy that everyone already hated was just killing people because he was the only one who could play on expert. I just sit down and he goes, okay, we're playing The Cliffs of Dover on expert. Keep up. I got 99% of the song and he shut up for the rest of the night. Great guy now that I know him, though. I'm currently looking for jobs in the craft beer industry in the Bay Area. People in the industry never treat me seriously as I'm a 5'6" beardless Asian man that only needs to shave once every 2 weeks. According to them, only hip guys with long beards and tattoos can be beer experts, and I obviously look like an 18-year-old high schooler that has absolutely no beer knowledge at all. I've read most of the brewing science textbooks. Heck, I even bought college microbiology and chemistry textbooks to read on my spare time to educate myself. I passed testing and other qualification exams, and I'm doing an internship in a brewery to get experiences, just to let the white folks know that, hey, Fergus here might really know his stuff. Maybe next time you hire a sales rep, consider the beardless Asian Fergus. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I've had an ex-girlfriend, teacher, employer, and parent tell me my musical career would go nowhere and that heavy metal is stupid. This year I got signed on to Napalm Records, one of the most reputable metal labels in the world, and I played Wacken Open Air, the biggest heavy metal festival in the world. They're still working their 9-to-5s while I tour the world doing what I love. New Year's Eve 1999. Myself as a 9-year-old was sliding down the slide at my local playground. When I got to the bottom, a group of about 6 guys surrounded me. Their so-called leader, who would have been 10 or 11, repeatedly asked me to hit him, thinking I was easy pickings, no doubt. I refused several times before he kicked me. I was sitting in the sand at the bottom. So I stood up and wailed the guy as hard as I could. I broke his nose and he ran off crying. Then his mum came back and asked me why I did it. The answer? Because he told me to. I had a guy say, "Man, you weigh 190 pounds. Nope, not even close. More like 250. They thought the Declaration of Independence couldn't be stolen. I sure showed them. I got engaged at 17, married 3 weeks after I turned 18. The entire family went bananas. My father told me I'd be living in a crap hole, never leave my little hometown, never make anything of myself, and to never go to college. My grandmother poked my now husband in the chest and told us to our faces that our marriage wouldn't last 6 months. I did go to college, I got an associate degree, got out of that hometown, bought a house, got a bachelor's degree while working full-time, sold that other house, built a bigger house, and we've been happily married for 13 years now. Longer than my parents' marriage lasted. And every single time we celebrate another anniversary, it's the greatest FU to my entire family inside my head. Never tell a girl they can't do something. Guy made my life hell for years. He had me convinced that if I left him, I'd lose the kids and he'd unalive me. He had all the money, all the power. He told me regularly that I was worthless and ugly. The phrase "piece of crap" still sends me into a bit of a panic if I hear it. He thought he was going to own me forever. I'd never make it on my own. I heard that every day. I'd be nothing without him. I'd be homeless. I can't do anything without him. Screw that. I'm making it on my own. It's a struggle sometimes and I had to ask for help in the beginning, but I'm happy and safe. More importantly, the kids are happy and safe. We don't have a lot, but we're okay. My God, well, I have to think that he was partly telling you these things to stop you from leaving, as much as because he believed them. But nonetheless, well done for getting out of that awful situation and keeping the kids out too. I'm sure it took a lot of strength to get out of there, and you did the right thing. The jocks in my class were serious D-bags. I was friends with several basketball players, and all were awesome people. The guys I was taking class with were just mean. They'd frequently try to injure lesser players to get us off their team. 2 weeks before a big convention, I was playing touch football when I was accidentally tackled and injured pretty badly. I realized that there are probably way more nice jocks than mean, but the ones I was in class with were awful people. Mostly because of them, I hated gym. I almost failed and didn't graduate because of it. I was a dancer, a serious ballet student. I was in the studio 5 days a week and worked out at home 4 days a week. In my junior year, 1989, I had to take the stupid presidential fitness exam. Fine. I did the stupid thing. The PE teacher said if I could at least not come in last, she'd pass me. I wasn't a great runner and I knew that. However, I came in above almost every single student in my class for leg presses, aerobic tests, sit-ups, and overall fitness. 2 guys beat me and I was the top female. The coach insisted I'd cheated. I had to do the test again. The very next day after school, it was just us. I beat all of my own scores out of sheer rage. When it was over, I tried to again explain that just because I saw no merit in dodgeball, it didn't mean I wasn't fit. I could do stuff with my body all of those jocks couldn't dream of. I still hold the record for the most sit-ups in a minute and leg presses for women. Screw jocks. People have been underestimating me all my life. My parents were both in the beauty business. I worked with them, helping them to run the largest beauty school in Oklahoma for 19 years. Since I was a man in the beauty business, everyone thought I was gay. I was a Marine from 1966 to 72. This was when the Vietnam War was going full blast. The war was very unpopular. Since I was a Marine, everyone thought I was a soulless killer. I was a professional musician for many years. Of course, everyone knows musicians are a bunch of substance addicts and drunks. In truth, I'm not gay, I'm not a drunk or a smack addict, and I've never killed innocent civilians. The point is that nobody knows enough about you to make judgments about you except yourself. All your life, people are going to assume they know enough about you to make judgments. They're wrong. However, that won't stop them from doing it. Some background first. I worked at my family's restaurant, and to avoid special treatment, I'd go by a different last name so nobody would know that I was the owner's son. So fast forward about a year and we hired a guy who I'll call Colin because that's his name. Colin was a major D-bag who tried to unload his responsibilities onto me, and one day I just told him that I'm not doing his job. So, what does he do? He puts me into a sleeper hold and only lets go a second before the lights go out. As soon as he let go, I told him I was the owner's son and that he shouldn't bother coming into work tomorrow. He came to work the next day and we locked him out. He was fired. I mean, to be fair, he should have been fired regardless of who you were. Kid challenged me to Pokemon. I effed them up with Bidoof. I told some kid I'd kick him in the crotch. He said he didn't think I could kick that high. I kicked him in the crotch. I'm a 65-year-old woman and Reddit underestimates me all the time. Apparently, if you're my age and female to boot, you only play games like Candy Crush, never Skyrim or Diablo or Civilization or Portal. Also, I must not know anything about computers or technology. People are shocked and I suspect a little suspicious when I address those topics. I hope I've changed one or two minds about the possibility that old people are not all the same, just as young people aren't all the same. I've always carried a few extra pounds and I took a lot of crap from people, in particular in baseball. What people don't know is that I'm actually quite talented and faster than most people half my size. One time, some kid from the other team told me fat kids couldn't play baseball before the game, and I proceeded to hit 3 triples and an inside-the-park home run that game. During my college years, a drunken butthead grabbed me while I was walking home from the library, and he started feeling things he had no right to feel. Definitely an unwanted advance. I gouged that motherfricker with my keys. There was blood. I walked away while he kept yelling, "What the frick?" When I was 15, I was playing golf with my friend on par 3, waiting for 2 friends to finish putting when 2 D-bags came up behind us and told us to tee off. The rules of golf state that if there's another group on a par 3, you can't hit until they're finished. Yet these guys told me that I wouldn't be able to hit that far anyway. So, me and my friend waited until the group had finished before we teed off. I went first, took a few practice swings, they told me to hurry up, and then I slam dunked it straight into the hole. The look on their face was frickin' priceless. I mean, as good a golfer as I'm sure you might be, it does sound like karma might have netted you some incredible luck to show those guys. Unless you're playing mini-golf, in which case it's more possible. A hole-in-one on a par 3 regular course is wild. On holiday in Croatia, a drunk local accused me of staring at his girlfriend, which I probably was, and thought that he'd be a tough guy. He threw a punch, I blocked it and hit him in the side of the head, and he went all wobbly and fell into a hedge. Within 15 seconds, I'd run off and disappeared into a crowd. I'm pretty skinny, but I was studying Krav Maga at the time, and the whole thing happened before I really registered what was going on. I ran off because Croatia seems the kind of place where the police are going to trust the drunk local over the sober tourist. Hope the guy was okay though. People underestimate me all the time. I hated school and I was a very average student, but loved university and learning, and found stuff that I was quite good at. I became a CEO in my early 30s. I deal a lot with other big businesses and know most of my state's politicians, their staff, major corporations, CEOs, senior management from a whole range of organizations. But really, I'm just a regular guy. I like cycling, running, shopping, wine, food. I wear jeans, I go for dinner, no different to any other 30-something. My wife is a couple of years younger than me, but looks about 20. She still gets refused alcohol in some places. As such, when we're out, people rarely suspect that I'm so well connected. I'm certainly no butthole, but I've used my influence to have people fired or reprimanded. All in all though, I try to use my power for good. I've insisted on people getting pay rises or more senior positions. I never say, "Do you know who I am?" or big myself up, but it sure is satisfying to have influence. Recently, I dealt with a waiter in a major venue. Great girl, very professional, but stuck in a crap job. Turns out we had a major function coming up. I think 400 people in a conference. I insisted she be put in charge of the conferences, and my staff worked with her to sort all the details. Long story short, it was a huge success, and she's now manager of the entire functions component of their business. After a back injury which saw me in hospital for 3 weeks and needing to learn to walk again, my now ex-girlfriend told me to just give up grappling, that I shouldn't do it anymore at all ever. I put on a heap of weight, got out to 115 kilos, and was basically miserable as F. She ended up leaving me over my determination to get back on the mat. Nearly a year of painful rehab later, I won 2 super heavyweight state championships in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, plus took a second and third in the open divisions. 14-2 for the weekend. I received my blue belt a week later from my coach and friend Tiago Stefanuti, who stood by me through the whole thing. I'm now walking around at 95 kilos and getting ready for a major tournament on September 21st. Never ever give up, and more importantly, surround yourself with people who will help you achieve your goals instead of burying you with their negativity. What's the worst case of psycho overprotective parenting that you've ever seen? When I was doing freshman orientation years ago at college, the tour guide told a story when we got to the dorms. The head RA for a freshman dorm got a knock on her office door about 2-ish months into the first semester, right before midterms. A girl walked in and asked what was the longest amount of time guests were allowed to stay in the room. The RA told her, can't remember the amount of days, and the girl says that her roommate's mother has been living in the room since the move-in weekend. Holy frick, no. I went to a high school with a guy whose parents had a camera installed in his room that fed into a TV screen in their bedroom. When he told me, I assumed it was one of those things they used when he was a baby, then disabled when he was older. Nope, according to him, they still kept it on 24/7, even though he was like 17 years old. I've never been so creeped out. Holy crap! I'd stare at the camera and pleasure myself furiously to assert dominance. Reddit has ruined me. My aunt won't let her kids open their own soda cans because she thinks they'll cut their fingers off, which was fine when they were young, but they're 15 and 18 now. When I attended private school, K-8, we weren't allowed to have soda cans. The reason was the principal had a student at her previous school get hit in the mouth with a kickball while drinking and sliced their lips. One freak, isolated accident, and no one's allowed soda cans. WTF. Sodas were allowed up until that witch came to school. It was a Catholic school, and that principal was your stereotypical nun who ran around the school with a bullhorn, yelling at students all day. A girl I know didn't get the talk from her parents until she was 18 or 19. Her mum had decided that if she didn't know what that was, she would keep her virginity forever or something like that. Now, Sally, this is what people do when they really love each other. Oh, Billy and I do that all the time. Girl at school wasn't allowed any sugar, no sweets, not even fruit. It was weird. I invited her to a party at mine, and her parents came round before the party to check our house was safe. They asked if our gate locked to keep people out. It wasn't fair on her, though. Every birthday or party, she'd eat tons of junk food and feel ill, and she used to crawl around the classroom pretending she was a cat. I think they broke her. Oof. I hope you recovered someday, young cat lady. I wonder if she was diabetic or something, or if the parents were just straight-up Fruit Loops. My wife's mother. Too many acts of lunacy to mention, but the one that sticks out was when we went to their house for the family barbecue. We were in our mid-20s. Mum decides to start a fight over my presence, as I wasn't family, and thus should not be attending. Wife says, if he's not welcome, we're leaving. Mum says, no you're not, you're grounded. Wife just gives her this tilt-your-head sideways look and says, we're going back to our house. I know someone who has just moved into her college dorm a couple of weeks ago. This girl has never had a house key as her mum wouldn't allow it. If she wanted in the house, mum better be there. Her parents also have all of her social media passwords, and her mum openly states she used to go and read the chat conversations. Not as bad as others, however the girl has already been home one weekend and is set to come back in a few weeks. We're all wondering how she'll rebel once she's under the college experience. This girl's brother, who's in middle school, maybe just starting high school, is worse. He is so coddled that he freaked out when he was left in a waiting room at a doctor's office alone, while his uncle went back for his appointment. The kid could not be left alone. For the record, neither kid is special needs. Around the middle of my first semester of college, I lost my phone. I noticed it was missing around when I got back to my dorm. Thinking that I left it in one of my classrooms, I called for it from a friend's phone. A classmate who lives off campus had found it. He took it home because he knew it was mine and was going to give it back next Monday during class, and that was that. I would get my phone on Monday, so problem solved. Boy, was I wrong. Because he turned off the phone after that call, my mother couldn't get a hold of me. My mum, being my mum, assumed I was dead in a smack house after doing too many substances. The lunatic took a plane and flew from Panama to DC just so she could check I was doing okay. Halfway across the continent just so she could ask one question. Keep in mind my best friend and 4 other high school friends were attending the same college as me and lived in the same dorm building as me, and she had all their phone numbers. Also, to make matters worse, this was not the last time she took an 8-hour flight just to make sure I was okay. My first roommate in college was extremely coddled by his mother, or at least I thought so. His home was about an hour away from campus, and she came up every day to get his laundry and make his bed, clean his side of the room. They were both neat freaks, and I wasn't a slob by any means, but I wasn't quite as neat as either of them would have liked. What ended up happening is I would come back from my class and find her making my bed, organizing my desk, and picking up my dirty clothes. Didn't really appreciate that, but I didn't want to make waves, so I just kept my mouth closed. Finally, it got really weird when I came back after a class had gotten cancelled and they were both in the same twin bed. He was sleeping and she was stroking his hair and face and singing him a lullaby. Wife grew up in a quiverful family. She was only allowed to wear ankle-length skirts, no movies at any time, only parental-approved books. Pilgrim's Progress, the Bible, theology books, no music except for classical and hymns. In order to date her, I had to court her. That involved never being alone, her parents inviting themselves to our anniversary dinners, siblings repeating every word that we said back to her parents. I gave her a goodbye hug and her mother yelled at her, calling her a whore and a loose woman. Finally, she gave up and ran away. They chased her to her car screaming and tried to block her in the driveway with a tractor. My first boyfriend in high school practically lived at our house because my mother refused to let me go to his. He was over every day after school and most weekends. Finally, I convinced her to let me drive myself to his house. At this point, I had met his dad twice, and his dad thought he did something to offend or scare me off because I never came to visit them. I really wanted to go out and hang out with him and his dad, so I drove myself to his house with the condition that I call my mother immediately upon arrival from their phone. Google Maps said it should take 8 minutes to get there. 8 minutes and 45 seconds later, I get an enraged phone call from my mum. I was just walking in the door and I hadn't called her yet. She made me immediately return home and grounded me from my cell phone for a month. The parents from these stories are the kind of people who go on murderous rampages when their children inevitably rebel, aren't they? I had an ex-boyfriend from high school whose parents were very strict about him dating. So we always had group dates, we weren't allowed to be alone, we went over to his house for a movie night and everyone all of a sudden left. But it was super late and my dad's place was across town. So I called for him to pick me up, but it was going to take 45 minutes to get there. His parents made me wait outside on the porch alone in November in Canada. It was cold. He wasn't allowed to wait outside with me. They didn't even let me wait in the foyer with them supervising. Well, girls who've frozen to death can't get pregnant, I guess. My mother signed me out of high school, and I was not allowed to go out of the house for almost 2 years. She quit her job and was convinced the Asian mafia was going to kill us. I wasn't allowed near windows, to get the mail, nothing. But my siblings came and went as they pleased. To this day, I do not understand. You were obviously the favorite. Congrats! I got one. My sister once told me about this one time when she was at a beach house with her friends. They were all over 20 years old and they were planning to stay there the weekend. Obviously, they were going to stay up all night watching movies when midnight strikes. This one girl's phone starts to ring and it was her mother telling her to go to sleep. Worst part? She silently stood up and went to bed. She's over 20 years old. I had a 9 p.m. bedtime at 17. I had to get up at 8 a.m. the next day. So for 11 hours a day, I was supposed to be in bed asleep. It drove me nuts. Getting up early was also a big no-no because I woke her up. I wasn't allowed to leave my room for anything either. It was hell. It took months of her screaming at me and me talking as calmly as I could while she hit, screamed, trashed my room and my schoolwork before she would let me stay up as long as I wanted. The school ended up getting involved because I went from an A student to a D in a matter of months because I just couldn't get all of my work done. I worked on the weekends and was training 4 nights a week as well. Made getting all my work done difficult when after school I was supposed to clean the house, eat dinner, then go straight to training. I work security at a college, so I've seen my fair share. This wasn't so much overprotective as it was babying. I once had a mother call our office. The exchange went as following. Mother: "Hello? Can you please tell my son's professor that he won't be in class today? He doesn't feel well." Me: "Where is your son?" "Oh, he's there, on campus in the dorms." "Ma'am, I don't know who your son's professor is, and even if I did, it's his responsibility to get in touch with them, not mine or yours." "Oh, I know, but he called me and asked me to call him out of class." "He's in college now. He's 18, he can do this on his own. He doesn't even need to call, he emails his professor." "Oh, you're so right." I had a friend growing up whose mum refused to send a Christmas card with her and her brother's photos on it. The mum was convinced at the end of the season, once people threw away the cards, the garbage man or anyone rifling through the trash would see her amazing beautiful children, find the address on the discarded envelope, and come kidnap the kids from their home. She did many other bizarre things, but that one always stuck out to me. I frickin' hate when parents do this. It's extremely overprotective and kids need to be exposed to the world. Besides, I tend to return the kids when I'm done with them. Sincerely, the garbage man. In all seriousness, the level of paranoia to imagine that people are digging through your trash specifically to get the rare thrown-out photos of children who sent the card from a different house is an extreme level of delusion. On my friend's 13th birthday, his big brother was taking us paintballing. We said goodbye to his mum. She was, in full disclosure, a severe paranoid schizophrenic who liked to go off her meds. Anywho, we left the house and headed to paintball. At a random gas station a good half-hour away, we stopped for snacks. When the older brother goes inside, the mum pulls up to a screeching halt next to us, rolls down the windows and starts yelling at us to make sure the older brother spends all the money on paintball, rocking the crazy eyes the whole time. She leaves by rolling around to the back of the gas station and idling there. When the older brother got back, we told him what was going on. He told us to buckle up. Sure enough, we pulled out of the gas station and she starts to try tailing us. I say try because next thing I know we're on the freeway doing at least 100, dodging from lane to lane till we found a quick off-ramp that took us under a bridge where we hid for a few minutes to make sure we'd lost her. The older brother refused to let her ruin my friend's 13th birthday. He was a good dude. There's two major things that we older brothers have to do. 1. Annoy your siblings. 2. Make sure no one else F's with your siblings. My ex's mum screamed in my face, legit inches away from my face, that I was stealing her son away when he bought his house. It was his decision to buy a house and he had wanted me to live with him. The location of the house, you ask? Directly across the street from where his parents live. Was his name Raymond, and did everybody love him? My former roommate's parents were extremely protective of them. Once I woke up to 3 calls and 4 texts from her mum asking if my roommate was in the room. I replied back, yes. Later that day, my roommate explained to me that there was a girl murdered in North Carolina that fit her description and her parents wanted to make sure she was alive. We go to school over 400 miles away from North Carolina. I don't know about the worst since my parents were pretty good about other stuff, but anything to do with adult fun times was a major no-go. I remember them trying to give the talk to my oldest sister, who was about 8 or 9 at the time, making me 4 or 5. We got to the part where the guy puts the thing he pees out of into a hole that I was not aware existed, and I ran away screaming. That subject was never revisited. They pulled me out of middle school adult education because it was too early and my high school taught abstinence. I thought that all adult flicks, not just those ones starring children, were illegal until college. My friend's mum. They're great people and I love them like a second family, but she was overprotective. 4th grade, his mum cut the tail off the Nightcrawler action figure I got him for his birthday for being demonic. 5th grade, she throws away the medieval Spawn action figure I got him for being Spawn. High school, she throws away the vintage Faster Pussycat shirt I gave him. His dad's cool though. He'd watch Beavis and Butthead with us when we were 10. I once dated a girl with absolutely insane parents. Throughout middle school and high school, they refused to let her go out to anything but school and choir trips. She had to argue and bargain with them for months just to be able to go to senior prom. They wouldn't let her go to junior prom. They also refused to let her get a driver's license or a car to limit her mobility. Even to this day, they refuse to let her go out. She, a 20-year-old woman, has to get permission from her super restrictive mum and dad to go out for coffee at the cafe downstairs. The worst part of it all is that she can't move out as they have hold of her passport and where she lives. It's more or less impossible to get anything done without it. On the legality of withholding her passport, I don't know for sure whether it is or not. The laws where I lived sometimes had really backwards policies. I've advised her to try to take action or escape many times, but for personal reasons, she's decided not to. I disagree entirely with her choice, but it's her choice to make, not mine. I graduated high school a year and a few months ago. A good friend of mine was a freshman in my senior year. Now she's a junior and taking college classes at my college. She's not allowed to talk to me because I graduated. She still does in person, but not as much as we used to be able to. There are a lot more stories of these sorts of relationships continuing into adulthood than I would have expected. How about you? When I was in college, I was dating a girl and had been for some time. My dad lived in another state and we had made plans to go visit him, so she could meet him for the first time. The day we were supposed to leave, like 2 hours before we left town, she got her grades from her college. They weren't as good as her parents wanted, so they grounded her. I went to her house to try and reason with her mum. I should have bailed at that red flag, but I was in love, and her mum was so condescending. I explained how my dad and stepmom had made arrangements for her to be there, and how excited they were to meet her. She wouldn't hear it. I made the mistake of saying, "I understand that you're upset, but deciding this right before the trip just seems childish." I was banned from their house. We were actually together for a really long time after that, but I know they're still really overprotective and she's really dependent on them. She's 31 and the last time I talked to her, a few months back, she still lived with them. My boss has a baby and a 4-year-old and they are super overprotective. Like the 4-year-old still sleeps in their bed with them and the baby, and they haven't left either kid alone with another person ever. Sometimes he talks about how they've never been out since the kids. Like I can relate. I have a pair myself, but we still live our lives. The 4-year-old went to preschool, so the mum went with him and sat in the class every day, and even sat at his table and played with him instead of letting him interact with his peers. One time they were in the office and my boss hand-fed him food because he didn't want the kid handling the food himself since the kid had recently touched their computer. Recently, he was describing their garden and how the food at the back never gets picked because we can't go back there ever because of the baby, you know? No, I have no idea. You lived on a small fenced lot in the suburbs. What are you afraid of getting to your baby if you walk out to the corner of your yard? The worst part is he's constantly telling me how tired he is and how his kids never sleep. But it's probably because they're all sleeping in the same bed, waking each other up all the time. Both my kids were in their own room by a couple of months old, and it made life so much easier. When they're in the room with you, you notice every little noise. I was TAing a general chemistry lab in college, and a parent emailed me after the first lab report with an annotated copy of the graded assignment I gave, which was a B+. Little Johnny had never gotten a B in class before, and I was being unfair since it was his first semester in college. Long story short, she threatened to go to the professor. I said go ahead, and they did. The professor was awesome. When kids whine and moan about their grades, he offers them a regrade, and then goes over the report with a fine-toothed comb. The B+ got changed to a C. The student was the one who ultimately asked for the regrade. Would he have asked for one if his parents didn't make a stink? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter. Part of being in college is learning to take responsibility for your actions. And there's a reason professors rely on TAs for grading freshman lab assignments. Their time and attention is better spent elsewhere. Asking the professor for a personal regrade must carry downside risk. Otherwise, everyone would ask for one every time. Please feel free to question the grader on anything. That's part of their job too. Just make sure you have a solid case before requesting a formal regrade. A friend of mine had a very overprotective and religious set of parents. He didn't have a door on his bedroom or bathroom. When you went over there, you had to take your shoes and socks off. I understand shoes, but how are socks any more dirty than bare feet? He never got dropped anywhere either. Always had to be mum or dad there. I think the scariest part of that to me and some of the other commenters was the lack of a door on a bathroom. Seriously, WTF? Yes, I've been waiting for this. So I met my wife on OkCupid. We were about 21 at the time. I came into her life at a very bad moment. She was failing classes, anxiety-prone, etc. Eventually, she got asked to take a leave of absence from her school. Against my better advice, she didn't tell her parents. Went back to the school to pack up her stuff and figure out what her next move was. Well, her parents found out within that next day or so, and her dad flew some odd 1,000 miles to get her and go back home. But this was the next thing. They cut her off from the world. She couldn't go outside the house unless it was to the schools that they enrolled her in to get her back in good standing. She dropped off the face of the earth. Her mum spent time writing all of her friends, pretending to be her, stating that they could not be friends and that she was just moving on with her life. Her mum did the same to me. Eventually I got a hold of her and we had to talk secret for months on end. We started dating and she graduated and we kept talking. Well, she finally moves out of her parents' house and comes to visit me some 1,000 miles away. Her parents cut her cell phone off. When she gets back to her hometown, they demand she comes over. They confiscate some items of hers that I gave her and told her to never speak to me again. That doesn't work, of course. Eventually we say screw it because they're bat crap crazy. We're talking the mother mailing me that she knew who many managers were and she could call them and let them have some fricking craziness, and then we got married. When we finally tell them, which is like a month or two after it happens, the mum played the victim like we didn't even get her the chance to get to know me and to like me. And I'm just like, B-word! You impersonated your daughter and told me that you wanted nothing to do with me. Your daughter told you that we would be together, and you threatened to disown her. As you could see, this completely works me up. Nonetheless, now the mother refuses to speak with either of us, has manipulated the ballless father into not speaking with his own child, and the teenaged younger sister thinks that my wife is the world's most awful person for choosing to live her life. For frick's sake. Cops. Are there any crimes that you intentionally don't enforce? Just before Thanksgiving, my dad called me and informed me that I had failed to pay a parking ticket and that my license had been suspended. Concerned that I would get pulled over and ticketed, I decided to pay the ticket right there and then on my phone. Since I couldn't print the confirmation screen out, I just took a picture of the screen with my phone so I could prove that I had paid the ticket in the unlikely event that I got pulled over. Well, lo and behold, as I'm driving home for Thanksgiving the next day, I get pulled over by a state trooper. He immediately recognizes that my license was suspended and starts explaining that I was driving illegally and so on and so forth. Before he can lecture me too long, I whip out my phone, scroll to the picture of the ticket payment confirmation screen and hand him the phone. As soon as he grabbed the phone, he sort of furrowed his brow and in a completely teed-off tone he goes, "What the hell is this?" I'm about to calmly explain the situation to him when suddenly he tilts the screen towards me and I'm staring directly at a picture of my eggplant. My freaking heart stopped beating and I could feel all the blood in my body rushing to my face. I had accidentally flipped one picture too far to an eggplant pic I took for some ex-girlfriend when I was hammered, and I had then handed the phone to the cop. Time basically stopped as I was sure he was going to arrest me for some kind of harassment crime and put me on a watch list for life. Mortified, I shakily scrolled back to the payment confirmation pic and handed the phone back to him. He reluctantly looked at the screen, nodded, and then let out a little laugh. As he tossed my phone back to me, he said, "Have a nice Thanksgiving," and walked back to his car shaking his head. I drove home in complete silence and deleted any and all eggplant pics the moment I pulled into my parents' driveway. I am forever in that dude's debt for just laughing it off instead of throwing me in prison. In conclusion, I accidentally showed a picture of my member to a state trooper and he didn't smash my face in with a baton. I will try my best not to arrest a parent in front of a small child. With a misdemeanor, you have quite a bit of officer discretion, but I've gone so far as to wait for an hour or so until a family member can pick up the kid before I handcuff the parent. It just really bothers me. I want kids to trust police officers if they ever need help, not be afraid of them. That's a good level of compassion there. Have to arrest you, but wait until mum comes to fetch the kid so the kid doesn't have a scarring memory of daddy. Driving between St. Louis, Missouri and Dayton, Ohio, I got pulled over around midnight by a cop on the freeway. I was confused a bit since I hadn't been speeding, but my car had California plates, as that's the state where I lived at the time, and I thought, well, maybe I have a tail light out or something. First thing he says when he sees my license and registration, "California, huh? Got a lot of pot in the car?" Because I'm a moron and I was tired, my answer was, "Define a lot." He did not find it funny. Luckily, his partner did. The guy with my license and registration, a younger white guy, kept his stone-cold face and said, "Step out of the car, please," while the older black cop just tried to keep from laughing out loud. "Hands on the hood, feet apart," he says, and he starts to pat me down. "Mind if you tell me what you're looking for?" I ask. "Do you have anything in your pockets that'll harm me? Needles or something?" "I have a Swiss Army knife in my right pocket, but it's all closed up," I say. "How do I know that?" he asks accusingly. Again, I turn into Captain Moron. Because I wouldn't keep a naked 3-inch blade only a couple of inches from my member while driving across the country. This time the older cop does laugh out loud and the younger guy looks flustered. He tells me slowly to turn around with hands above my shoulders, then he backs up 4 steps and says to use my left hand to empty my pockets onto the hood of the car. The older cop just sighs and says, "Hold on a sec, don't move," and pulls the younger guy to the back of the cop car where they have a very private and brief conversation. The younger one gets into the car and gets on the radio, while the older one comes up to me and says, "Look, you know why we pulled you over? Because you were swerving in the lane a bit. Thought you might be drunk. How long have you been driving?" "About 5 hours. I left St. Louis around 7, hoping to make it to Dayton." "You been drinking?" "Diet Coke and Gatorade mostly. No alcohol or anything." "You need some sleep, son. Dayton's still about 45 minutes away. Think you can make it?" To be honest, I was kind of tired, but I think you guys just scared me awake. He smiles, "Alright, hang tight a sec," and walks back to the car. He comes back. "You have 2 bench warrants in California, and there's an APB out in the car as stolen after an armed robbery." "What?" I say. "That doesn't make any sense. I never did anything." I'm panicking now. I'm freaking out. In a second, my night just went from boring to awful. "Actually, just messing with you. You're free to go. Hopefully that adrenaline will keep you awake for an hour," he says. I laugh and say, "Jesus frickin' Christ, that is effed up, man." He just smiles and says, "Take care, stay on the road." I got to Dayton around 1 a.m. and couldn't fall asleep until 3. That dude knew his crap. Well, I'm not a cop, but this happened to me during my substance-using days. This was years and years ago, and I'm proud to be clean now. I was driving to work when a cop recognized me and knew I was driving with a suspended license. He searched my car before he arrested me. As we were pulling up to the jail, he held up a bag of needles he found under my seat. He said, "If you promise to quit this, I'll throw these away before we pull into the station." My mom bailed me out a few hours later and took me straight to rehab. That cop was awesome. He saved me from being in big-time trouble, and likely saved my life by scaring me into rehab. You have no idea how often us cops try to do this. If we know someone is a frequent flyer, and we recognize what the underlying problem is, we will go out of our way to solve that problem rather than just making the arrest. Because I know if I can solve this person's addiction, illness, or apathy, then I won't have to continue to take dispatched runs there. I've got junkies and drunks into rehab. I've paid for a young working girl's bus ticket home to Chicago so she could be with her family and her support system. She was in a city all by herself, and her pimp had her so strung out she couldn't tell you what day of the week it was. If I know someone is religious, or their family is religious, I'll use that as leverage to try and get people into rehab. Arresting someone, as said before, is just a tool used to temporarily solve the problem. It's a band-aid, not a cure. By the way, by my estimates, I'd say that 70 to 75% of all domestic-related run-ins have an addiction element in them, substances or booze. 95% of homeless that I've dealt with are addicts themselves, and I'd say 65% have mental health issues. My first run-in with the law at 17. I was driving on a 3-lane highway at rush hour going 85 in the far left lane while tailgating a big SUV. A van parked on the left shoulder suddenly came into view. I had drifted slightly into the shoulder and swerved to avoid sideswiping the van. Being a young, inexperienced driver, I overcorrected. Full panic set in as my Honda Civic slid into the left guardrail, sailed across all 3 lanes of traffic, flipped around, facing the wrong direction, and finally skidded to a halt. It shook me up good, but I didn't hit a single soul. Cop: "How fast were you going?" Me: "About 70 to 75. "The speed limit here is 55. Are you sure you were going that fast?" "Maybe I was going faster. It could have been 80 or 85. Him, face palming: "The speed limit here is 55. If you are going faster, I have to ticket you for reckless driving. I don't want to ticket you. Tell me, what's the speed limit here?" 55? "How fast were you going?" 55? "That's right. You were going 55. Then to the next question. "I didn't see any damage to the guardrail that you hit. Did you?" "I don't know. There could be some damage. I didn't see it." "If there's damage to the guardrail, you'll have to pay a few $1,000s to fix it. Now, did you see any damage to the guardrail?" "I didn't." "No, I didn't see any damage either." "Good." In conclusion, cop had me change my story so as not to incriminate myself. This sounds like something I can relate to, too stupid to accept the obvious easy out I was being offered. Here's a follow-up comment below. Reminds me, in college I lived on the second floor of a small apartment complex. Everyone in the buildings was students, and 90% of the buildings in the area housed students. The people downstairs were having a decent-sized party that had spilled outside onto the deck and front yard, which isn't really a big deal as it was a weekend night with nothing but students around. A high school student who was at the party had wandered off about a block away and was peeing on a fence. A cop was driving by and turned his lights on. Kid, of course, runs right back to the party, which causes the cops to come and break it up. As the cops arrive, I head back upstairs and watch everything unfold from my balcony. The cops are talking to the guys who live below. Cop: "This kid we saw down the street says you're responsible for him. If you are, we have to arrest, ticket, whatever the punishment you, for providing alcohol to a minor. Are you responsible for him?" Neighbor: "Yes, he's my friend." "Are you sure you're responsible?" "Yes." "Are you really sure?" "Yes." "If you don't know him, we will just call his parents to pick him up. So are you responsible for him?" "Oh, wait, no, I've never seen him before." Police officer here. There are plenty I don't enforce, but as stated above, I have enforcement discretion in 99% of situations. My hands are rarely forced to pursue charges where the victim is the state or city. Traffic violations, substance charges, etc. I personally try not to enforce anything that I'd do. I speed sometimes I'll roll a stop sign, and other minor things. I hate working traffic and generally stay too busy bouncing from call to actually do it, so that also has a bearing on what I enforce. Now that being said, I will hammer you if you're causing direct danger to another person. If you're excessively speeding during rush hour, through a school zone, or with kids in your car, then I will issue paperwork all day. But it generally has to be a situation that causes immediate danger to someone other than yourself. If it's 3 a.m. and you're doing 70 in a 50 on a back road, chances are I'm just going to let you be. Also, petty stuff. There's a lot of technicalities written in laws. Sometimes slight variations make something legal become illegal. I try to avoid crap like that. I try to keep a good repertoire with the people in the areas I work in, so taking enforcement action on some bullcrap law is a quick way to make enemies. I've learned over the years that the people I'm nice to today may be the ones who come to my rescue tomorrow. It's happened before. Warnings are my best friend. People appreciate warnings. Usually, "Hey man, you know your headlight's out? Try to get it fixed, okay?" is enough so that next time you see them, it'll be working. And finally, Reddit's favorite subject, green herb. I work with a lot of younger guys. We're all pretty progressive and understand that Mary J. prohibition is a joke. Most of us try our best not to take action on a personal use unless we absolutely have to. Sadly, the older guys around here don't share our views on the subject, and what's even worse is that they are our sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. Sometimes our hands are forced, but I work with a very good department that does allow us tons of enforcement discretion. Not a cop, but my dad is. This isn't exactly a refusal to enforce a particular law, but he works in an area of higher crime rates and he's always trying to instill a sense of trust in the youth. One day, he was walking back to his patrol car after a call and he saw some younger guys playing basketball. He walks over to them and sternly asks for the ball. They ask him why, but with no explanation, he again tells them to hand the ball over. They disappointedly toss the ball over, thinking it's just another butthole cop trying to ruin their day. Instead, my dad drains a 3 and just walks away. He believes that interactions like this with cops will give the youth a better sense of trust in law enforcement systems. Just thought I'd share. He would have looked like such a tool if he missed. Cop here. I generally don't arrest for small amounts of Mary J. A, I don't think that green herb is bad, and B, it's nearly legalized medicine at this point anyway. I'm not big on ticket writing. Tickets are expensive and almost everyone is broke right now. I find that usually a 2-minute conversation with an officer makes people change their driving habits anyway. Plus they feel super lucky for having caught a break. You need to remember that officers have a lot of discretion. However, if there's a victim and probable cause, that discretion can go away. For instance, shoplifting a $2 item. If the store caught you and insists on prosecution, there's not much that I can do. The thing is, I still have discretion over what to do with a person, i.e. release them from the scene with a ticket, bring them to the station to fingerprint or photograph or issue a ticket and release, or book them into jail overnight. Any contact can turn into a dangerous situation. Go to odmp.org and look at the line of duty deaths just for 2012. 2 of them occurred during regular prisoner transports. Generally, the more dangerous a call seems, the more amped up, aware, and prepared you are. I'm more worried about getting shot as I open the bathroom door after taking a leak at a gas station. I've never thought about the downtime of a police's life being so dangerous, and the fact that a lot of fatalities can occur at the least expected time in it. It does make sense, I suppose. I do not enforce Mary J so long as 1. It's a misdemeanor account, 2. You're not selling, 3. You're not a prick. That being said, I will make you dispose of it. I'm allergic to it or something. Within seconds of coming close to it, I will get a migraine. Homosexual behavior is still on the books in Texas under deviant behavior. I don't enforce this. The selling of armadillos is against the law in Texas as well. I won't arrest you, but I'm documenting it. It's like a bucket list of offenses I want to come across as a cop. I am not likely to write any traffic citation so long as it's not a hazardous violation and so long as you agree to fix the issue. I usually try and find all drunks an alternative to jail unless they're driving or fighting. I never let something slide because it might be dangerous. I signed up knowing full well I can die doing this job, and have used myself as a shield to protect people on more than one occasion. I hope this helps. Back when I was a cop, 12 years ago, I never arrested anyone for possession of Mary J. It was pointless, and there are already too many people in jail for what I deem minor possession charges. I remember I stopped a guy. Well, I didn't stop him, he was stopped at a stop sign for 13 minutes before I pulled up behind him. I questioned him, realized that he was baked out of his mind because he told me he was waiting for the stop sign to turn green. Pulled him out of the car, got permission to search, found a bag with about a half an ounce in it, and I went over to him and asked if he had someone who could come and get him. He called his girlfriend, and as we waited, I threw his bag in the ditch. When his girlfriend got there, I said this to him: I'm going to sit right over here in that parking lot and do my reports. If I see you back here before I leave, I'll arrest you. I don't care if you come back and get the stuff from the ditch, but it better be after I leave. He didn't come back, but the bag was gone by the time my shift ended. I've always been a proponent of legalizing Mary J. Why? Because if we're at a bar and I'm drunk and I bump into another drunk guy, chances are we're going to fight. If I'm high and I bump into another high guy, chances are we laugh. It can't be legalized for a myriad of reasons that I won't get into here. The premise of the question is inherently flawed because of a common misconception about how policing works. The law is less a set of rules cops have to enforce and more a tool cops have for handling situations. It's pretty rare that cops have to enforce the law. Felonies and certain domestic or abuse crimes are the only ones that have to be charged, and even there, it's not hard to find wiggle room on how you define the crime. For example, public drunkenness is a crime. Do I stand in front of bars and make everyone do sobriety tests? No. Now, if you're yelling and screaming like a jackass and making a scene, I'll come up and tell you it's time to get gone. If that doesn't work, I'll arrest you for public drunkenness and make you bookings problem. So do I choose not to enforce particular laws? Yeah, all the time. It's basically my entire job. And this trickles down into your other questions. Enforcing the law is always weighed against what risks are associated with the arrest, how likely the victims are to testify, and a dozen other factors. Law enforcement is more art than science. Bonus secret, most cops, particularly in cities, don't want to arrest people for the day-to-day silliness. It's a lot of paperwork, you're now responsible for the person while you get them cited or booked, and then you have to go to court on your days off. It's really just a huge pain in the butt. The trick to slipping out of most arrests is about making letting you go less of a hassle than arresting you. Question: when you say making letting you go less of a hassle than arresting you, can you elaborate a little? Less hassle is as follows. Number 1. Get gone. If a cop says move along, your best bet is to be somewhere else. 98% of the time, this is all the bar owners or neighbors want. The last guy standing there arguing about how the Constitution gives him the right to sing Free Bird at 3 a.m. on a public street corner usually loses that argument and a chunk of his next paycheck. Number 2. Be a good sobriety wingman. When I'm dealing with the numerous situations that come from drunk people, I usually look for their sober friend because he's the best bet to diffuse the situation. Don't be afraid to step in for your friend and say something like, "Officer, I know he's gotten out of hand, my car is over here, let me take him home, and he won't be any more trouble." Rare is the cop who will pass up an opportunity to make a drunk person someone else's problem. 3. Fight it out in the morning. There's this kind of bizarre belief that cops are going to be your referee for bar fights, domestics, and all kinds of assorted nonsense. We're never going to figure out who was right. We've only been called because the fighting or screaming. If it's a bar thing, just let it go and move on. If it's a domestic, don't try and convince the cop you were right. Convince the cop you're reasonable enough to not fight anymore. Offer to take a walk or stay with a friend. Come back to argue in the morning when you've got a cooler head. In conclusion, cops are there to de-escalate the situation or lock people up. If you're willing to be the one to de-escalate, you're more likely to avoid being locked up. There we go. We not only have a list of crimes that cops are likely to let people walk for, we also have suggestions of ways to increase your likelihood of that outcome. I policed a small town for a decade and have been at a city station for longer. Generally, if I come across a situation where I could use my discretion, I would. For example, I would usually convey a drunk home rather than have them sober up in the cells. For recidivist offenders where a brush with the law was not sufficient, or where a person's behavior warranted more direct action, I would enforce the law to the letter. I'm all about giving people a chance, but only up to a point, even if I don't agree with the penalty that might be enacted at court, or if I don't agree with the law itself. I have never not arrested just because of a dangerous situation. I couldn't live with myself if a failure to act on my part led to a bad day for a member of the public. That, and I don't want to leave a job undone, just so some of my workmates have to come in later to do it. Hopefully that answers your question. I remember during high school prom, 9 to 10 years ago, I had my parents' car. It was a pretty fast car at that time, a 300 horsepower V8. I was driving like a complete idiot, going over double the speed limit. A cop sees me and follows me just as I pull into my friend's driveway. I walk over to him knowing that I've messed up big time. He was pretty intimidating and borderline yelling at me. He eventually let me off, saying he didn't want to ruin my prom night. I was basically yes sirring the entire time while crapping my pants. Wherever this cop is, I have never been pulled over for speeding since. You did a damn good job, and I now race my current car in a controlled track environment. I still love to drive fast, but it never happens on public roads. Arbitrary laws stopping drinking are counterproductive. Sensible drinking should be something that you're brought into. In continental Europe, it's perfectly normal to drink a small amount of wine with a meal. You just mix in water to lower the alcohol content, and drinking sensibly becomes the norm. When you make drinking illegal, all that happens is people start drinking with no prior experience and end up drinking to excess, which in turn promotes violence and makes many areas dangerous at night. I would make a distinction between laws that I chose not to enforce and crimes. I never wrote a speeding ticket for less than 15 over, unless there's an extenuating circumstance, school zone, extremely careless, butthole, etc. I also never got really excited about small amounts of Mary J, a violation as opposed to a crime in the state I worked in. Criminal offenses are a little different. I can't recall ever not enforcing a solid criminal offense, unless it was something small. Criminal trespass where it was easier to just run the person off, or if the person was rolling on someone else, or the victim wasn't interested in prosecution. That doesn't mean I wouldn't write a citation to appear and forward the case to the DA on a weak case or for other circumstances. Also, I once arrested a county commissioner's son for DUI and had a former friend arrested for it as well. I do not believe in breaks for nepotism. There are some circumstances that I'm aware of that police openly ignore some criminal activity because enforcement becomes impossible. Enforcing Mary J laws at Grateful Dead concerts would be pointless.
What happened to you when you were young that you didn't understand until years later, potentially not safe for work? I was in LA at the age of 10 and ended up with sunburn as I am English and not used to the heat. My dad took me to the restroom where we shared a stall, and he helped me take my t-shirt off so that he could reapply after sun. This was pretty painful. I was screaming inside a locked stall, saying that it hurt, so was surprised when a burly guy forced open the door, looking quite annoyed at my dad, who explained correctly what was happening. I grimaced through the pain and agreed as best as possible. Only years later that I realized that burly guy was a top bloke, and that the pain he was trying to save me from wasn't that kind of chafing. TLDR, a nice, bear-like man made sure I wasn't being inappropriately touched by my own father. I found a butt inside my dad's closet when I was 6. A butt. Looking back on it now, it was probably an adult toy, just something he made to look like a woman's butt. Either way, I pulled it out of his closet and was sitting next to it on the couch when he got home from work. I was a lonely kid. Edit, I'm a girl. When me and my sister were around the ages of 8 and 6, we gave our mom a necklace for her birthday. She was about 36 years old at that time. It was a blue/green twinkling necklace, and we thought it was perfect for mom because she loves glitter and jewelry. She wore it at every occasion she had guests for dinner and similar. We were very proud of our gift because she liked it so much that she wore it all the time. Years later, I realized that it was an ugly piece of crap. Really, no sane human would wear this dog collar in disguise. I cringed at the thought of actually giving it to mom. Then it clicked. She wore it for us, so that we don't feel guilty of giving crappy things to her while making a fool out of herself in front of everybody else. I love you, Mom. When I was about 14, a guy who I went to school with had leukemia. He disappeared from school for a while he had chemo, and then came back when he recovered a little. We weren't particularly close. In fact, there'd been a little bit of animosity between us, for no particular reason, just petty kid stuff. But last day of term, as I was walking towards the school gate, he caught up with me and walked with me. He told me he was sorry there'd been tension between us and that he liked me and hoped we could be friends. He died during the summer break, and I realized sometime later that maybe he had known he wasn't going to make it, and that he was trying to make his peace with the world before he went. When I was a little kid, we had a kid in our class named George who was mentally disabled. We had special needs kids in our school, and we wouldn't have them in the same class, but they would share recess with the rest of us. George dressed funny, he couldn't speak very well, and he had a hard time understanding what we were telling him. As you might imagine, this led to a lot of the kids excluding him or making fun of him. My friends and I decided to be his friend. He was a nice kid, didn't mean any harm. He was just a bit slow. Years later, in telling the story to someone else, I remember my teacher explaining that he was quote-unquote Greek, which I didn't understand at the time. Thinking about it, I remember that just like the special needs kids, the ESL kids shared recess with us. George wasn't disabled. He was just a recent immigrant from Greece who didn't speak English very well. Visiting my aunt and her cool roommate Susan when I was a child. Didn't realize until my cousin said something when I was in high school. You mean her roommate? Oh, holy crap. My mom told me that my goldfish ran away. You are now imagining a fish with legs. You're welcome. We had a science fair in 6th grade, and I was doing some sleep experiment or something. Being the know-it-all I was, I referred to my subjects as testes, like trainees, I thought. My teacher politely suggested calling them test takers instead. Years later, it dawned upon me, and I have mad respect for him not laughing in my face. I would have. When I was 12, my divorced mother and I lived in a nice duplex in my hometown. She would go to the city after I fell asleep and party downtown with my aunt almost every night. I didn't know this until I was older. One night in particular, I fell asleep on the couch and halfway woke up to the sound of the front door opening and closing. I saw my mom walk in with a creepy, hooded, shadowy figure close behind her. I fell back asleep. The next morning, I asked my mom who was with her when she came home last night. She looked terribly confused. I told her about the figure behind her, and the color drained out of her face, and she shook her head and told me to stop playing games. That if I kept telling ghost stories, I would invite malevolent spirits into the house. Found out like a year ago that she brought a guy home and made me believe it was a ghost so I wouldn't tell my grandparents. Crafty woman. TLDR, my mother brought a guy home one night and let me believe for over 10 years that I had seen a ghost. Sometimes we would stop at my aunt's work so that my dad could go in and talk to her. I wasn't allowed in because I was a kid and it was an adult place. The only other things that ever got the descriptor adult were adult films, which were not for kids because of all the screwing. So I happily assumed that my aunt worked someplace where all sorts of screwing was happening. Years later, I was driving by and noticed that it was a retirement home. When I was about 4 or 5, we got 2 very important life-changing bits of medical news. The first was that my baby brother was on the way. The second was that my father was diagnosed with acute lymphoma and had about 2 weeks to live. When I was little, I had no grasp of how serious cancer was. My mom told me my dad was sick, but that was it. I remember my mom kept insisting that I spent time with him, but I would always get angry when he got too tired to play or kick me out so he could vomit from the chemo. I remember one night in particular where my school had my first back-to-school night/carnival. They had all sorts of rides and stuff. My dad had just had extensive surgery and had staples across his entire neck. I used to joke that he was like Frankenstein. My dad managed to make it through the big presentation the teacher made to the whole class and their parents, but barely. I thought this was boring, but would be worth sitting through because I would get to go on carnival rides afterwards. But my dad had to leave. He couldn't even stand up. I could not understand how my strong 6'4" father could be so selfish. If he could sit through the boring part, why not the good part? I, to this day, feel tremendously guilty over how I treated him and the tantrum I threw when my mom was struggling to hold my dad up and my dad was struggling just to stay conscious. Fortunately, the doctors were wrong. He made it well past the 2 weeks and eventually beat cancer 5 years later. It took years before I understood how seriously sick he really was. He had gotten down to 90 pounds, but to me, he was still a Superman. We had this gym teacher in elementary school that would bring a bag of apples to class and give the girls one if they'd give him a massage. I was mad because I absolutely loved apples, still do. I thought it was unfair that only the girls got apples, so I told my teacher how Mr. So-and-so would only let the girls massage him for apples, and we had to do sports. I was not an athletic child, so the idea of eating apples versus gym activities greatly appealed to me. I had to go to the principal's office to tell them my story, which was basically, this is bullcrap. Everyone should be getting apples, or no one should be getting apples. Other students corroborated my story, and soon enough, so-and-so was gone. TLDR, escaped, prevented, and ended potential inappropriate abuse from a teacher because I love apples. My dad was a fairly strict guy. Military background, very type A, etc. I was a very outdoorsy tomboy of a girl. As a kid, I loved to find caterpillars and build them little homes and find the best flowers for them to eat, and my dad loved this hobby of mine. So much so, he would encourage my caterpillar hunting, which I always thought seemed a little weird, but I didn't question it. There were a few plants out by our barbecue in the back that he specifically asked me to keep an eye on, because, as he told it to me, this was the best place to find them. My kid brain just thought my dad and I had found a common ground and that he wanted to help. About 5 years later, as my naivete started to wear off, I realized my dad was a total pothead. My brother, who is 10 years older than me, was chatting with me about my new realization one day, and that's when it was finally spelled out for me. Those plants that, according to my pops, were the best place to find my footed worm friends were actually just my dad's pot plants, and he enlisted my help to keep them bug-free. TLDR, my dad encouraged me to hunt caterpillars off his pot plants. I just thought he was trying to help me find the coolest bugs to play with. I'm a redhead, but neither of my parents or my brother is a redhead. So when we were out in public when I was young, a lot of people would ask where my red hair came from. One day, when I was probably 6 or so, my parents told me to start answering the question with, "From the mailman," which I did constantly because people always seemed to react to it. It wasn't until I got to high school that it clicked that the mailman in this scenario had not delivered my red hair in an envelope, but that it had come from a much different package. When I was about 8, I was using my parents' bathroom and picked up a hand towel by the sink, and a plastic member fell out. I already knew what a member was since my siblings and I had watched the hilarious Where Did I Come From sexual education video narrated by Howie Mandel. I thought this plastic member was hilarious, and when my little sister was taking a shower, I poked it in through the shower curtain and would poke her with it. She thought it was pretty funny too. Our mom was horrified to find us playing with it, and when we asked what it was for, she said it was for medical purposes and studying. We were never able to find it again. It wasn't until a few years ago when my sister and I were reminiscing about stupid things we did as children that I remembered this incident and told her, "Oh my god, we played with mom's adult toy." TLDR, found my mom's adult toy and joked around with it. Sister and I didn't realize until about 15 years later what it was. When I was 6, we used to play a lot with Pokemon cards at school. One recess, I left my deck inside the classroom. When I came back, my Charizard was missing from it. 3 days later, a friend from class came to me and told me he found my Charizard outside in a bush. Took me 10 years to realize he stole it from me and then got cold feet and gave it back. When I was 7 and my brother was 4, a man came up to the backyard where we were playing and asked if he wanted to see the puppy in his van. My brother said yes and he started to follow him. I grabbed my brother's arm and screamed very dramatically, "No!" until my parents came out. The man waved at my parents and then drove away. I felt a little embarrassed for, quote, overreacting by screaming no like that. Looking back, there is no way he wasn't a creeper. I asked my mom just now if she remembered that, and why she didn't report him to the police to let them know there was a potential kidnapper in the neighborhood. She said, because he didn't actually do anything. When I was younger, my house was messy, and my mom only ever cleaned on special occasions, and that was only certain rooms people were allowed in. I always thought this was completely normal. We had wine boxes holding up our couch and shoved right up our chimney, which was covered by a fire screen. Our kitchen smelled of mold and rotting food, the benches and floors were covered in the source of the smell and other unidentifiable objects. My clothes used to sit in a washing basket so long after they were washed that they would start to grow fuzz. There was one room beside mine which was so overpacked with rubbish and toys that I could barely crack the door open. It was just filthy overall. No one ever saw this though, and if they did, I can only imagine that my mom would have lost custody of me immediately, and I think she knew that. I lived like that until I was 12, and I didn't really understand what was happening until recently when watching an episode of Hoarders. It's kinda messed me up. I can't sleep unless my house is spotless, and I constantly have panic attacks if I forget to clean something before leaving the house. In kindergarten, I had a best friend named Daniel, and we played with toy dinosaurs and traded them all the time. January comes around, and I invite him to my birthday party I was having at my house. He never showed up that day, and my mom told me that day he wasn't going to be able to make it, as well as he wouldn't be able to come to school again. Little kid me was like, okay, I'll see him later. He died in a car crash on the way to my birthday party. Edit, thank you for your support and kind words. To the people saying this didn't happen or other rude things, this did happen, and I feel sad every single birthday I have. To the people asking did I get his gift, I did not. But I still have the last glow-in-the-dark Triceratops that he gave me. Really, how heartless do you have to be to just assume a story somebody wrote on the internet is made up, especially when it's about something as emotional as this? Like, I get it, you could easily lie about something for clout or internet points, but come on man, you can't just assume something like that. I hope I'm not late to the party. When I was about 6 or 7, I was looking for bugs in my backyard when I came across a super rare and cool praying mantis. Naturally, I scooped it up and put it in my bug container. Later on, I was looking for more bugs when I found yet another praying mantis. Lucky day. I was super excited and put it in the container with the other praying mantis. Both of them stood in there dead still and just kind of bobbed around like praying mantises do. I came back a few years later and was appalled by what I found. The bigger mantis standing there as still as ever right on top of a praying mantis head and legs. I was super spooked. Was that mantis a killer? Did the smaller mantis fall apart or explode? What happened? It really weirded me out for a while. I'd say about 10 or so years later, I found out that the female mantis eats the male after screwing. I still don't know if I'm an accomplice to a murderer or a world-class wingman. In my adolescence, telemarketers frequently called our house. My parents instructed my sister and myself to respond to questions like, "Is your mom or dad home?" with, "She or he's in the shower." Well, one summer day, when I was 6, we got a telemarketer call. After I explained I was only a child and could subsequently not conduct business for the household, he asked, "Is your mom home?" I said, "No, she's in the shower." "What about your dad?" "He's in there too." It was not until years later that I realized his sudden embarrassed laughing was caused by me accidentally making this guy think my parents were getting it on in the shower while their poor innocent son was home. I lost one of my teeth when I was 7 years old, so I was excited to get money and stuff from the tooth fairy. I put the tooth under the pillow and I was ready to get my prize for losing a tooth. The next morning, I woke up and the tooth was gone, but no present. I went and told my dad about how I just got scanned from the tooth fairy and he was like, "Oh, the tooth fairy had to run fast, so she gave me the money to give to you." He then pulls out his wallet and gives me the $2 that the tooth fairy gave him. I was so happy, but still wondered why the tooth fairy was in such a rush. My mom was really intent on having my younger brother believe in things like Santa and the tooth fairy for as long as possible. Once she forgot to replace his tooth with money. I asked her about it, and in her infinite wisdom, she had me, I got home before everyone else, make a letter from the tooth fairy to explain why I was late. I said that 2 kids had gotten into a fight and knocked every single one of their teeth out, so she ran out of quarters and had to run home to get more. I was quite proud of the story, and he bought it. But he started having doubts, so he left a note with one of his teeth asking for proof that the tooth fairy was real. My mom wrote him a letter back and taped a small lock of black hair to it. All of my family has blonde hair except for my dad, but he keeps his very short. He bought it hook, line, and sinker, and didn't find out the tooth fairy wasn't real until well after he lost all of his teeth. Had that note on his wall for years. Turns out the hair was from the single black spot on my grandma's dog that was living with us at the time. Pure genius. When I was 6 and my brother was 4, we used to walk to our cousin's house, which was 2 houses down. One evening, we asked our mother if we could go over and she said yes and lets us walk over by ourselves. While we're walking, this car drives up to us and asks if we knew where the nearest McDonald's was and if we'd like to come with him. I told him we weren't allowed to eat McDonald's without our mother's permission and turned to get her to ask if we were allowed. She was already running outside to get us when the car sped off. I was around 15 when I was reminiscing with my family and she brought it up. Creepy realization. When I would stay at my grandmother's house, I had a bunch of VHS tapes about dinosaurs and stuff that I wanted to watch. Sometimes I get to watch them, but only if my grandpa was home. Meemaw always said, "You'll have to wait until Peepaw gets back. I can't work that VCR." She also had all her soaps recorded on tape, and many times I saw her record them without my grandpa being home. She feigned incompetence so that she didn't have to watch my dinosaur movies, and I never realized it until I was an adult. It is the wise woman who plays the fool. Meemaw, you sly fox. I never understood that not everyone had people drop bags of groceries on their steps, while the people just rang the bell and drove away. Dawned on me as an adult that we were poor. Then, I looked back at the old pics and noticed all the signs. Tiny Christmas tree in the background, disappointed faces on Christmas pics, no vacation pictures. Dang it, I'm gonna try to avoid having my kids live that way. The other part of that is I didn't realize how stressed my mom always was until I got older and realized not everyone's parents freaked out weekly and slammed doors and peeled off in their car, leaving their kids alone and scared. I specifically remember one incident where my mom, brother, and I went to the grocery store, and while we were all walking to the car, my mom dropped a gallon of milk and it exploded all over the ground. My mom started crying, and my brother said, "Don't cry over spilt milk, Mom," kind of chuckling. I didn't understand at all. Now, looking back, it hurts me to think how hard my mom was trying to keep everything together. She passed away at age 51 when I was 18. She had a rough adulthood. I live my life now hoping to become what she wanted me to be. She made tons of mistakes, but she was there for me on her own, and she tried so hard. All you teens, take notice of how your parents act when they think you're not looking. You might be surprised to find that they are very stressed and working super hard to make you happy, oftentimes with only frustration to show for it. I was cleaning chickens with my grandparents when I was a kid, probably about 10 years old. I was pulling out the insides, and I found what I thought were 2 eggs that were growing inside the chicken. I got all excited and showed my grandma and told my mom about it when she picked me up. I noticed that they both had smirks that seemed odd when I told them about it. Years later, I thought back about that time and realized that it was a rooster, and those were his nuts. Sounds like somebody found out why roosters go cock-a-doodle-doo. I'm sorry. Okay, this one's a wild ride, so stick around. Carjacked with my cousin. I was 12, she was 16. Gun pointed at my head and everything. At the court hearing, they were caught, my lawyer person lady asked if I was aware that the 4 men who carjacked my cousin and I had intention to kidnap us, as the police found duct tape and rope in their getaway car and they fessed up to it. That was a heavy bomb dropped on me while I was testifying against them, but I never really understood how lucky I was until I was older. Since everyone asked why they changed their minds, I've heard that the leader of the group decided against it because we reminded him of his kid sisters. Since it was technically my uncle's car and happened in my uncle's driveway, they were the ones responsible for pressing charges against the men, who were pulled over for speeding down the freeway just as 2 detectives arrived to ask us questions. The car was totaled.
What's the worst thing your parents have found on your phone or computer? Just so our listeners are aware, you're going to be getting more of an ASMR effect as I speak quieter and closer to the microphone. I've been a little bit sick and I want to avoid tearing my throat. I spent about 5 days in a mental institution about 15 months ago. I gave my mum the passcode to my phone for whatever reason, to either Snapchat people or read my text that I'd received, or something small, in and out like that. Like, she had to click one thing, tell me what it said, respond, and close it. I was 16, by the way. Anyway, when I got home, she told me she found pictures of a negative pregnancy test on my phone from a month or so earlier, and she took me to a doctor. Turns out I had scar tissue in my uterus from a miscarriage 6-ish months earlier. Scared the crap out of me. Very grateful that she did it because the tissue could have inhibited me from having children in the future if it had gotten necrotic or something. I lived with my aunt briefly when I was about 12 years old. One night my uncle hooked me up with a bunch of video games and installed them on my computer. My brother said he saw my uncle find my adult flick stash on my computer, but I assumed he was messing with me. Well, next morning, apparently, my very uptight aunt barged into my room while I was on the computer and told me, "There are some things on your computer you need to delete." I immediately realized my brother was telling the truth, so under my aunt's burning gaze, I went to the adult flick folder to delete it. Only I have so much adrenaline going through me that instead of just deleting the folder itself, I decide to click it open. So now there's a bunch of extra large thumbnails showing on my monitor of hardcore adult flicks, while my aunt is standing right behind me. This gives me another shot of adrenaline and my 12-year-old head is swimming. I try to select all of the files, but my hands are so damn wigged out now that instead of being able to select all the thumbnails to delete them, I keep just double-clicking on an image of a girl getting railed by some gorilla of a man. This happens around 3 more times as I'm physically unable to make my hand work the mouse properly, and all I can think about is my aunt thinking, why in the world does this kid keep clicking on this crap? Eventually, I finally delete everything. Writing this has made me realize that I need to ask my uncle why he decided to be a rat next time I see him. When I was 11, they found out I search, "Does white snow affect cows?"
Well, does it? If I recall correctly, most mammals are affected by white snow.
With a body weight like that, it's going to be expensive. I don't see what the problem is personally. I Google that kind of thing all the time out of morbid curiosity. Before I had my own computer, I'd use my dad's desktop to browse the internet, listen to music, etc. I would message a friend of mine on Facebook quite a bit. We'd talk about a lot of stuff, but of course, mainly girls from school. Dad saw a few messages that were extremely explicit about a few girls from class, about wanting to be smothered by their various bodily parts and crap stuff like that. One of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Extremely passionate diary entries about Daniel Radcliffe from the Philosopher's Stone era. I was around 11, and the diary entries were in epistolary format. Cringe. Back in 1999 or so, my mum was embarrassed that I had a song called Horny Horns on the computer when we had to get it fixed. I told her it barely had any lyrics and it wasn't naughty at all, but she was worried the computer guy would think it was. When we got the computer back, the guy said I had some interesting taste in music in there, late 90s techno, and she said,
"See? The only reason he listened to it is because it had horny in the name. I'm so embarrassed."
I can imagine this guy with his pants down, lube, and tissues at the ready, only to click on it and it plays 90s techno.
On the other hand, it does take real dedication to your craft to be able to pleasure yourself to a MIDI file.
Mum saw my history of adult fun time scenes in TV shows and unspeakable act scenes. It was in 4th grade. I was curious and absolutely mortified.
Yeah, I found that stuff when I was 9. Thought it was way too adult for me.
So I searched prawn for kids and kid prawn.
My parents are probably on some kind of list.
This is somehow messed up and wholesome at the same time.
Ah yes, the curious kid searches. My son did this as well when he was about that age, except it was a little more gay. He didn't understand what that word meant, so he naturally went to YouTube to see what he could find. So he's seen some stuff at a young age.
I accidentally sent my mum a fanfiction about SpongeBob getting the unspeakable act committed against him by a gang. When I was younger, my mum found a lesbian adult flicks on my computer. I blamed it on my grandma. I guess this isn't bad, but it did change my life. My sister went on a shared laptop and I had stupidly left open my internet browser which had pro-anorexia websites and blogs still open. I was 14 or 15. She told my mum, who thought it was a cry for attention, but it really wasn't. I was furious that they'd found this and was promptly sent into a network of doctors for my eating disorder. Kinda pre-rehab for those who aren't physically needing hospitalization but mentally are messed up. It was a rough 4 years, but who knows where I'd be if I hadn't gotten the help I needed back then. I'm doing much better now. ED conquered.
Nothing, 'cause I'm the best at hiding stuffs.
Hid my brother 7 years ago, and no one has found him yet. My mum found a Tumblr post when I was 18 where I'd said,
"Wow, today I got 4 piercings and did it in the butt for the first time. #eventful.
Like others have said, my browser history. However, my mother printed them out, like Excel format, 4 or 5 pages long like some sort of really screwed up Walmart receipt. She then sat me down and read them aloud back to me in front of my 2 brothers. I tried the old political fallback of deny, deny, deny when she dropped the bombshell. My email login was at the top and bottom of every list. This is really bad, but when I was 13, I was super afraid the zombie apocalypse was going to really happen. So I found and downloaded the Army's Improvised Weapons and Munitions Handbook. Yeah, imagine a 13-year-old with a file labeled explosives on his laptop. Man, I now understand why kids thought I was going to shoot up the school when I mentioned mixing 2 ingredients would make it go boom in chemistry. Plus, I probably ended up on a list somewhere.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I might have a flash drive with the book somewhere in my room. To all the people asking for a link, yeah, I'm not going to go down for distributing bomb-making material, so no thanks. And we're all poorer for it, sir. Share your crazy prepper life with us so we can devour it wholesale. Wet, word for female anatomy, games.com. And then I learned about deleting history. Literally the same thing happened to me. All I think about is how happy I am I learned that lesson before I realized I was gay. Parents didn't find, I found on the family computer. My brother would stay up late and look up a bunch of adult flicks and he wouldn't clear the browser history. I, being a very nice brother, would clear it every morning. Eventually, I got so sick of having to do that I changed the desktop wallpaper to say, "Please remember to clear your browser history." That's pretty great. How did he respond to that? He probably thought it was from his parents. Imagine that feeling. I did this to my dad once. Looked up the song Redbone on his phone and it auto-filled to RedTube. Changed his home screen to an image saying, "Clear your history." I did a kind of similar thing to my dad once when I was 15. I was looking for a movie to watch on his computer. He torrents movies instead of buying them because he travels for work a lot and it's easier to have movies and TV shows on files rather than dragging DVDs and stuff around. But anyway, back to the story. And instead of having a nice Harry Potter movie to watch, I found his adult flick stash. I still to this day have no idea how I came across it, considering I've downloaded movies from his laptop numerous times. I renamed all the files to names like, "I know what you're doing," and "Ew," and "Father, I love you, but can you put these somewhere I can't find them, please?" I wonder if he found them. It has never once been discussed. My mum randomly asked for my phone, so I was like, sure. She went through my phone and I had forgotten that I'd downloaded a video from Pornhub about a few days before. She found it and it was a woman riding a guy on a couch. I was in 7th grade. Makes me cringe and laugh. Reminds me of my experience. She walked into the room I was in while I was on my laptop and read what I was reading over my shoulder. All adult fanfiction. I was like 12. She took my computer away and made me go pray. I'm female. I was around 12 years old when my dad found bondage searches on the computer. My searches for big-chested women as well. It was a very, very awkward talk. He taught me how to delete my browsing history too. I'm 23 now, so 11-ish years ago. We're best buddies and text basically every day. Even though his princess might have turned out to be into lesbian bondage stuff, I'm still his favorite kid, out of 5 kids. You're also my favorite out of his 5 kids. I was looking for a way to get high from household items. My mum was not happy or proud. She called me about it when I was 30 minutes into a weekend-long road trip. Sorry, Mum. When I was about 13, my mum found some satanic memes on my phone. They were jokes and pretty much parodies of just girly things on Tumblr. You know, like getting your nails matching with your best friend, just girly things. Like those, except she found one that went, sacrificing your best friends to Satan and pledging your allegiance to the Dark Lord, just girly things. With an image of someone holding a hammer and a nail on top of Justin Bieber's head, when he was just a coconut head, and ready to pound it. Some real edgy humor. Boy, did this land me in hot water. My mum found it, swore I was legitimately satanic, and started shaking and putting her hands over me talking about, "The power of Christ compels you, you leave, demon," and crap like that. Was I really satanic? No, just freaking edgy and dumb in the 8th grade. She tells the family she thinks I'm satanic. She tells the pastor at my local church that she thinks I'm being persuaded by Satan to do evil crap. That I'm giving into temptation. So cue me in this pastor's office as it's a private church/school and he has an office. And he talks to me about why Satan is evil and why I may feel like following him and not God. What's wrong? What's my home situation like? Just took a very awkward conversation when he realizes I'm some naive kid who probably didn't really follow Satan. Took a while for her to believe I wasn't trying to be satanic. She probably still thinks that I was serious, and if it wasn't, then it was too edgy and dark for me to be joking about at that age. But yeah, that's the worst thing. Never been caught lacking with adult flicks. Satanic memes, on the other hand, yes. It does baffle me how much of children's moral guidance seems to be placed in the hands of religious leaders in some places, instead of, educators and trained caregivers.
Also, the next video contains numerous references to a particular form of Japanese media consisting of tentacles and adult content. I've invented my own word for it so that this video doesn't get taken down and demonetized. Thanks.
Okay, Mom, firstly, you need to understand that this isn't prawn, right? It's called octoprawn. Yes, that's a Japanese phrase. I'm learning Japanese from these videos. Before I get to the part about learning Japanese, though, let me comment first on the cultural implications of octoprawn. After the Second World War, which Japan lost after the nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the entire country underwent a period of self-reflection and soul-searching. They wanted to understand how events led to the rest of the world responding with such devastating atomic attacks. This led to a strong antipathy towards warmongering and international aggression. You may have heard about how the Japanese constitution doesn't allow the country to have an active military. Same idea. A lot of post-war Japanese culture is a reflection of such attitudes. For example, the Godzilla movies are not just about giant monsters fighting each other. They're about the horrors of unbridled atomic technology. Godzilla is always depicted as being powered by or healed by nuclear power, and how such a horrifying force can never be allowed to be unleashed on humanity again. On a similar note, Japanese animation enjoyed a resurgence of popularity after the war, due to the populace choosing to turn towards the comforting images of their youth. Japanese kids, much like the kids in our country, like to watch cartoons. As a result, psychologically speaking, cartoons represent a reminder of the simpler and more innocent age. This upsurge in popularity resulted in animated images pervading almost all of Japanese culture, from movies to television to advertising to music videos and so on and so forth. And because animated images were so widely accepted throughout Japan, they were used for almost every type of source material, or to tell any type of story. Animation was no longer the sole domain of children. You got animated movies that told very mature stories, like Ghost in the Machine or Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Sometimes you get stories that involve very mature topics, like war or murder or the unspeakable act or torture. The Japanese have generally become quite accustomed to seeing depictions of such things in their animations. So yeah, that's why I was watching this movie. It's an epic tale about a space crew exploring a distant planet. The crew's all female because Japan's very into gender equality, and they run into a hostile alien with a bunch of tentacles, and well, I don't want to spoil the story for you, but let's just say the crew eventually figure out how to get along with the alien. It's a story about bridging cultural gaps and finding common ground. Seriously, it's worth watching. Okay, next, you remember how I talked about knowing Japanese words and phrases now? It's because these movies are subtitled in English, so I could learn Japanese while watching them. I mean, I know words like yamete and ai and igu and lots of others. Much better than just knowing konnichiwa, isn't it? I mean, I'm developing such an interest in octoprawn that I might just be a major in Japanese when I go to college. Who knows, I might be the one writing the subtitles in the future. Oh, and one last thing, you should know that octoprawn's considered pretty mainstream in Japan now. And it's also quite common in the Western world now, too. Everyone's watching it. I mean, if I don't watch it, I'll be seen as some sort of freak at school. You don't want your son to be some kind of pariah because he doesn't watch octoprawn now, do you?
I was actually 20 when this happened, but it's still a good story. Eating dinner at a restaurant with mum, aunt, uncle, grandmother, roommate, and a couple of family friends. I take out my phone to show my roommate, who sat beside me, a couple of funny selfies I took wearing his glasses. I'm swiping right to show him more photos, and then there's an eggplant pic. A big, veiny, red old eggplant pic. We both jump violently in surprise. I make a sort of squealing sound and we both blush. My mum is sat opposite us and gives us a funny look. She looks like she's about to ask, then decides against it. We eat dinner. When I was like 16 or 17, my parents found an exposed picture on my phone that I sent to my boyfriend at the time. They each separately came into my room to lecture me, /cry about me being a heathen, and then held up the picture of my bare butt the entire time. And then they came in together to pray over me because they thought Satan was trying to take over my body. Undressed photos of my then girlfriend. She thought I had them to blackmail her if I needed to and made a big story out of it, including talking to her father. They found out through my browser history that I was an active participant of a pro-anorexia forum, and they read all of my pathetic posts on there. I also had an accountability thread where I kept track of how much I starved myself, so they were really thrilled to find out about that. That wasn't a good time at all for me. Oofed. We all hope you're doing better now, story writer of that post. That disorder is no joke. Obligatory, not me but my sister, blah blah. Anyway, my sister is showing my grandparents something on her phone. She walks away for a moment to talk to me, then goes to take her phone back. The first thing that she notices is that the Google Assistant was scrolling through her gallery and was showing off the personal pictures she sent to her boyfriend. She's hoping it didn't show, but my grandparents are looking at her very strangely. Thankfully, she had underwear on in the pictures and they didn't include her face. We were able to write it off as being from our weird cousin, but it was still too close for comfort. Google Assistant was barred from gallery after that. What have mine found? Octopron I saved years ago as a curious preteen. What haven't they found? About 40,000 words worth of adult fiction that I've written. So this was funny. I must have been about 15 at the time. My half-sister, 3 years younger, was caught by her dad looking up adult flicks. To be fair to her, my mom decided to search both hers and my search history. Oh no, JPEG. I played it cool while my mom scrolled through months of my search history. I sat in my room watching YouTube or browsing the internet every day. Lots of adult flicks. Worst thing she finds is a Shane Dawson video titled, "She Licked My Ball, XD," or something like that. Oh my god, what is this? It's just a silly YouTube video, click on it, it's okay, I swear. She gets bored after a few minutes. Continues scrolling for a few more months worth of search history. Okay, son, glad to know I can trust you. And gives me a hug. I pleasured myself that night to some hardcore crap, praying my thanks to the incognito gods. I regret nothing. One time back in the day, my brother printed out an exposed girl photo from our family computer and printer. It was not HD to say the least. He apparently hid it in the household computer desk. Mum confronts us a while later about a picture from a web address called Dumpster Hussies. We never got in trouble of any sort, but think she was more worried about viruses. Also, I'm pretty sure one time my mum went to the printer and there was a backlog of orders yet to print, and they were also adult flicks of some sort. When I was much younger, middle school, my mother happened to grab my phone to look for something, and just my damn luck, I'd forgotten to close out of the hub. Especially unfortunate was the fact that when I was 18 and abused ads played as a banner, and my unsuspecting mother tapped that ad, that's what she thought I was watching. So now she thinks I'm into that very unpleasant side of adult flicks, and I had quite the talking to. Thank God she didn't scroll down and see what I was actually watching. Embarrassing to admit, but gay stepbrother fanfiction. Between Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly? Phineas and Ferb? I went through a period where I obsessively looked at adult flicks, about 12 years old. I actually wouldn't pleasure myself or anything, I just watched it because the concept of adult fun times was so new to me. The problem was, I would do it on my mum's computer because I didn't have it on my own. I would do it when she was out of the house walking our dog, but I never knew she was coming back until I heard the click of the front door lock opening. So I had about 4 seconds to close the browser and run to a different room and act like nothing was going on. Well, one day I was a few seconds too late and my mum poked her head into the office just as I was closing the tab. She immediately checked the history and found everything. Her solution was to remove the door from the office room so I couldn't have privacy in there. This was roughly 5 years ago when the entire family shared a computer, and a very crappy one at that. Overheated in an hour of cancerous Facebook game playing, and browser tabs constantly froze. One time I didn't get lucky enough for the tab to close in time for my dad to gain sight of the screen. The whole tab went blank, as that's what it tended to do when it froze, yet the title of the tab only read one word, which my father had to read, knowing full well it was an intentional search. Horse anatomy. My dad saw my interest in computers at an early age, so he bought me one. There wasn't any real pop-up blocker standard back then, so I stumbled upon videos of girls mud wrestling somehow. One thing led to another, and my dad ended up finding my search history. The next day, my dad took away the computer and gave me the talk. Imagine your small, frail librarian, my mother, sitting across from you reading out loud the names of those websites, www and .com included. She just put out her finger every time I tried to talk, fixed her glasses, and continued. My dad once found a not-safe-for-work conversation I was having with a male interest at the time. He read the entire thing back to me, aloud, told me I could be found guilty of being a hussy in a court of law, and showed his friends the entire conversation, including pictures, because it was appalling and disgusting and he needed advice.
Forensic scientists, what is the most WTF case that you ever had? A friend of mine is a CSI, and I don't know if he's posted here, but just in case he hasn't, I'll put this here. Anchorage, Alaska, 2008. A 27-year-old woman hasn't paid her rent in 4 months. The landlord gave her a bit of a reprieve because he knew she was very poor and she was in a low-income housing. But after 4 months of zero contact, enough is enough, and he calls the cops to get into her place and either see her to talk or change the locks and remove her stuff to a storage shed so the apartment can be released to someone else. The cops find the front door to be bolted and use the landlord's key to get in, then find the woman dead in her shower, just sort of slumped as if she fell against the wall and slid down. The water wasn't on, and as this is Alaska and in the winter, the water is never shut off by the city because if hot water isn't moving through the pipes, they freeze and burst. The fact that her shower is off means she never turned it on or someone turned it off. The body is taken to the morgue and autopsied at the family's request because no obvious means of death can be found. As far as the examination could conclude, she died from an adrenal surge causing her heart to stop, more commonly known as frightened to death, which yes, can actually happen in some rare cases. The body was old, but no test showed any residual illegal substances in her system. None were found in the apartment, nor was there any sign of anyone having entered or left before the cops. The young, pretty average health woman appears to have gotten into her shower, and then her heart stopped due to terror. As far as I know, that's where the story ends. No substantial evidence. When I was pretty young, I got into all of the procedural crime shows and stuff like CSI, Law & Order, just all those things, so I'm kind of interested in this topic. A friend of mine is a forensic scientist and her department dealt with burglary cases only, usually generating pretty uninteresting stuff to tell people. But her only good story is that once she got a pair of gloves found at a crime scene. She went to examine them and felt that there was something hard inside. She turned the gloves up to get it out and out falls a thumb, ripped off at the first joint. Apparently this particular burglar was holding up a safe while his mate went underneath it, dropped the safe on his hand, ripped his hand out and ran. They obviously caught the guy. The only interesting story they have, kind of rude, but I wonder if whoever caught them was like, so, was it worth it? A friend is a psychologist whose previous life was in crime scene photography. She went to the scene of a self-deletion in a garage. This guy had a project car that he worked on his whole life. When he decided to end it all, he wanted to go with the car. So he shut the garage and turned on the engine and waited. To top it off, he had taken a bunch of pain and sleeping pills. When my friend got there, it was a good while after his death. EMTs and other specialists were there looking for details and whatnot. He was the VP of a fairly large chain of local businesses, so there was an insurance settlement to consider. My friend is in the middle of photographing the scene and the guy was laying there, pronounced dead hours ago, and he suddenly just shook hard. She thought it was a death rattle, so she kept taking pictures. Eventually, the guy sat up and nodded, and the EMTs were called back in to stabilize him and eventually save him. Apparently, the car had run out of gas right at the moment he went out, and he was pronounced dead on the scene. He couldn't talk or do much, but he had actually survived. I don't know what the laws are in Alaska. I was gonna say he was lucky, but then I thought about the fact that he's probably being arrested for attempting self-deletion. Forensic chemist here who occasionally gets called out to crime scenes just to consult on evidence collection. On the first one I ever went on, a father had killed his adult son and put the body in a deep freeze that was in his bedroom. There were a ton of cops and the other people from our lab there, but when the coroner asked for help removing the body from the freezer, I volunteered quickly, as I had never been that close to a dead body, other than funerals, and was curious. As I helped the coroner lift the body out of the freezer, which still had a bunch of food in it too, a pack of frozen biscuits was stuck to his body. I had to pry them off of him, which was both very weird and kind of funny at the same time. I often ponder, like so many other people do, what my final moments will define me as in the face of those who know and love me, as well as strangers who may be there to witness my downfall or whatever. And there are people who obviously you know and care about, who love you, but that will remember you fondly. And then there are people like this who are just like, oh yeah, that guy who got biscuits stuck to him. Tragic story though. EMT here. We had a guy who was naked, bloodied, and tortured, then left outside in -10-degree weather until he froze. We found him literally frozen maybe a day after the fact. Now, my question is, how the hell do you move a 230-pound popsicle without breaking it? Very, very carefully, I imagine? I interned at the office of the chief medical examiner when I was 18, saw a lot of interesting stuff, learned a lot of interesting things. One case stuck with me more than the rest. I arrived one morning, went down to the basement where bodies were laid out for rounds every morning. On tables lay the usual, a couple of folks who died in the hospital and needed a partial autopsy to sign off on a death certificate, an illegal substance overdose, an illegal substance murder. Then, on one table, there was a blue Tupperware bin, a big one, about 3 by 3 by 2. It was filled with concrete, and out of the edges a little plastic wrap was lining between the concrete and the bin. And then, out of the top of the concrete, a couple of toes were poking out. The story was, out in the country, a family saw a small fire in the woods outside of their house. They called the fire department, and after putting out the flames, they found this bin. When we cracked the bin open, we found half of a man, about from the belly button down. Someone had thought the best way to dispose of this body would be to cut it in half, wrap it in plastic, put it in a Tupperware bin, fill the bin with concrete, and set it on fire. What they had really done was essentially cook the body in an oven with the plastic wrap acting as a roasting bag. Skin was sloughing off of the legs and feet, and the skin was discolored by this time, a nice green. Though this was about 10 years ago, I still distinctly remember being able to make out saw marks on the top edge of this half, however. Notes were taken and no signs of death were found on the legs and no indication of the person's identity either. Unfortunately, my internship ended a few weeks before they found the top half, so I never got to learn more about the case, but the image still certainly sticks with me till now. I once considered doing an internship at a morgue myself, but you know what? Some of the things you'd see in there would probably just, like they said, stick with you for the rest of your life, or at least a really long time. I'm not a forensic scientist, but did forensic anthropology as part of my degree. When handling a rib cage, a ton of flakes came off and ended up lodged in my mouth, nose, and eyes thanks to a friend. Yummy, flaky rib cage bits. Forensic genetic in Mexico. I've seen some serious stuff. I was assigned to the identification of mass graves, over 300 bodies, dismembered, scattered, and burnt. It was just one site. We had many. I'm gonna presume that's the work of the cartels. Stepfather used to be a police officer and loves telling stories about crime scenes. He went on to tell us about how after a motorcycle rider was struck by a train, he went under the wheel. His torso was found about 30 feet from his legs. They were connected by an intestine, so he picked up one end of the intestine and started to wrap it up like a rope. I defer back to the young man who had frozen biscuits stuck to his dead body. Just imagine that. You're dead on the floor and some guy's just wrapping up your intestines like he's putting away the garden hose. It's a rather surreal thought. My cousin is a coroner and the worst was he came to get a body in a trailer during the summer. Man had been dead at least a week and it burst. He said the smell was the worst of his life. He and the other guys were up to their ankles in fluids and had to throw out his clothes and shoes. His boss felt so bad that he bought them each a new pair of like $300 shoes. I was literally watching Seven last night. It's a film with young Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. Do not recommend it for the faint of heart. And that's what I'm picturing. Like the crime scenes in it are super gritty and horrible. Like you would not want to be there. And that's what I'm imagining this trailer as. Not me, but there was a great case that I can't currently find on Google. I hope it was true. A woman was found dead in her bed with blood everywhere, and I mean everywhere. There were wine glasses or drinking glasses throughout the house with blood in them. I think blood may have been smeared about as well. So the investigators assumed some bizarre ritual, a gang of people, the whole 9 yards. Long story short, she had some strange clotting problems and was bleeding out of her mouth for an extended period of time. She probably got hazy from the loss of blood and was just trying not to make a mess in her house, so she kept spitting the blood in glasses. Eventually, she was overcome and died in her bed. I only hope it was true because I don't want to propagate lies. I was about to say out of context the whole I hope it's true is a bit weird. I did an internship at a PD one year. I got to be with a forensic team for a week. I got to see the aftermath of what a stabbing looks like. A 113 stab wound aftermath. Yes, 113 is correct. Unreal amounts of blood. I used a kitchen knife. Upon first inspection, it appeared like a dozen because there was so much blood on the body they couldn't tell how many there actually was. Gruesome. I actually personally know someone who was almost decapitated in a similarly excessive and brutal way. They survived and they were a very nice person. They moved away a good long while ago and, well, I hope they're doing well. I regularly post on Unsolved Mysteries, so I thought this was fitting here. One of the best cases on Forensic Files was a cold case that had gone unsolved for decades. A man told police he had picked up a hitchhiker in the evening. After the man and the hitchhiker got into a fight, the man threw him out of his car 2 miles away from his mother's house on a busy highway. The man later came home to his mother's house only to find the hitchhiker at his mother's house. He left to go call the police from a payphone. This was before cell phones. The police found his mother dead in bed. The man was a beneficiary of a huge life insurance policy and was the prime suspect. The cops or anyone did not believe the man's story. It was inconceivable that the hitchhiker, who did not know where the mother's house was, could make a 2-mile journey which turns in a neighborhood to just randomly break in and kill the man's mother who he didn't know. But there was blood at the scene and a palm print on the staircase that was not the man's nor the mother's. After some investigation, people at Hardy's did confirm that there was a man that fit the description looking to hitchhike. Still, they just assumed the man had paid the other man to kill his mother. 15 years later, after the invention of CODIS, the DNA was matched to a career criminal who definitely matched the description of the hitchhiker. After bringing him in and interrogating him, the killer had no idea he had killed the mother of the man who gave him a ride. He simply walked through this neighborhood looking for a house that looked empty, and his mother's was the only one without the lights on. It's baffling. It also sounds like just plain awful luck. I was at a regional medical center in rural Guatemala when we had a case come in from an RTA, road traffic accident, involving a pedestrian and a chicken bus. For those who don't know, a popular but incredibly dangerous form of public transport are retired American school buses that have been painted all sorts of vibrant colors, but underneath, the mechanics are shot to hell. Anyway, this pedestrian had been hit by one of these rolling death traps, which was fully loaded going around 80 miles per hour, and ended up getting wrapped under the front right wheel arch and completely mangled beyond recognition. They found bits of this guy spread 2 kilometers down the road, and the initial impact had split his torso down the middle and basically turned him inside out. When all the bits had been collected, the height of the body bag was around 2 inches, so you can imagine the state of the remains. Passers-by helped us pick up bits from the side of the road, but dogs and cats ran off with a fair amount of the smaller bits. Guatemala is a cool place. First of all, I also never heard of a chicken bus. I assumed it was literally that, a bus for chickens to be transported to wherever chickens need be. Second of all, my God, he was bloody... there's barely anything left of him if that's the case. Not a forensic scientist, but I majored in anthropology, with a focus on forensic anthropology. Given that, I was a fairly regular reader of the Forensic Science Quarterly. Here are a couple that I remember. Kid found on top of an elevator in a 6-story dorm. Apparently, he was elevator surfing, which is just as dumb as it sounds. He somehow got his head caught in the cables and got it twisted around a couple of times. This did not immediately kill him. He died from asphyxiation, which means he had anywhere from 30 to a couple of minutes to contemplate what had happened to him before he lost consciousness. Another one was sort of a mystery case. Headless corpse found in a truck in a national park. No head was to be found in the immediate area. Truck was turned on but had run out of gas. The wound was very clean, no sawing, almost like a guillotine cut. The investigating authorities were rather confused, but eventually they found a receipt in his pocket for 50 yards of nylon rope. They widened the investigation and eventually found the rope tied to a tree with a noose at the end. Further searching of this area eventually turned up the head. Pretty unique method of self-deletion. Mystery solved. This one isn't from the magazine, but a story personally relayed to me from the officer involved. A call comes in for a 50-ish black woman dead in a garage. Investigation reveals it is actually a 35-year-old white male. Dude put on a dress, rigged a noose to his garage door opener, and proceeded to watch some smut in his garage while choking himself with the garage door opener. Battery in the remote died, and then so did he. I am reminded of an episode of BoJack Horseman. I had a professor who was an expert in osteology and would train radiologists and doctors to recognize defensive fractures in arm bones. Defending yourself from an attack can leave a very distinctive spiral fracture on your forearm, and in his years of research, he'd never encountered that specific fracture pattern anywhere except in a defensive wound. Until he was attending a seminar at the University of Toronto in February, and when leaving the lecture, he was walking down an outdoor flight of stairs when someone called out to him to ask a question. He had his hands in his pockets because he wasn't wearing gloves, turned, slipped, and fell while perpendicular to the steps. His forearm hit the step and resulted in the exact spiral fracture he'd never seen anywhere else. And best part is that the radiologist that examined him was someone he himself trained to look for this sort of fracture as a warning sign for domestic violence. I'm picturing the dude who fell goes in, his student or former student, the radiologist examines him and is like, "Sir, has your wife been hitting you?" A bit late, but this is my area, so why not go for it? I'm in third year as a forensic anthropology student, so I don't have my own cases yet, but I've studied hundreds and have been told about some. My professor in advanced forensic methods was one of the leads in the case of Anthony Hardy, who basically killed people, dismembered them, and put their body parts in bins that were eventually found by a homeless guy. Another one she worked on, actually all I'm going to list were ones she was involved with, involved a man who went to park his car in his garage as he normally did, but his wife's car was in the spot. She refused to move it, so naturally, he stabbed her her about 17 times, put her in his boot, and drove off. He explained the bloodstains away as being animal blood of something he'd hit, carried home in his boot, and cut it up on the garage floor. Obviously, this was a crap excuse, as simple blood testing showed it was human. She ran us through the forensics involved in that case, and it was quality stuff. One was a man found with his wrists and throat cut sitting on the floor of his living room. Depressed old man. Self-deletion, right? Wrong. The cut to his throat stopped halfway across and was at an unusual angle. The stopping halfway through is a good sign of holding someone from behind, reaching around and slitting the throat. Stopping halfway is in that position, it's much harder to fight a struggle. Also, the wrist wound had very little blood and was evidently done after the throat slit. The way he was sat showed that it was likely a loved one, as his body was taken care of, as strange as that sounds, and placed in a loving position. Possibly the weirdest one, a woman was found dead in the hole at the bottom of the stairs with blunt force trauma to the skull. There was a large hole in the ceiling above her, and the situation told to the forensic team by the police is that she fell through the loft. In the loft, no boxes were moved, and there were loads around the site of the hole. If she fell, she would have grabbed out, right? More damning, it was clear, by some sawdust in the state of the slats, that someone had used a saw to cut through the wood. Also, the blood splatter on the wall was all wrong. Basically, what had happened was that her husband had smashed her head in, put her at the bottom of the stairs, cut a hole in the loft, called the police, and told them of the accident. He also tried to kill the family liaison officer in the kitchen when the police were there after he realized the jig was up. Seen a lot more stuff than that. Self-deletions that look like murders but no evidence found, vice versa, bodies found in burnt buildings, bodies found in swamps or moors from years back, terrible labs for the production of illegal substances, even got sort of taught how to make illegal substances actually. Mass graves, photos, grapes, murder victims, it's pretty grim at times. I'm just picturing the dude who left his wife at the bottom of the stairs and everything thinking, oh yeah, I'm smart, I'm real smart, I'm like a Columbo villain. From a family friend, people who do lots of yoga involving rolling their heads around the axis of their neck, over time it wears away the corners of the vertebrae, which is why you're not supposed to do it. He saw a few cases of people getting into relatively minor car crashes. What should have been a nasty case of whiplash instead becomes fatal, as their spine was weakened and can't stop the momentum of their head. So it just pops right off of the spinal column. The head doesn't fly away or anything, it's still held on by muscle, but the driver is just as dead. I gotta be honest, through all of the violent descriptions of the things that happen to people in this, I'm just getting a blast of the X-rays from Mortal Kombat or something of whatever I'm describing. It's crazy. I'm not even a Mortal Kombat fan. I'm more of a Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, Blaze Blue guy. Hell, if you catch me in the right mood, I might want to play Dead or Alive more than friggin' Mortal Kombat. An ex-journalist once told me the story that got him out of journalism. He covered a story where there was a house fire. Police suspected arson. Then they discovered the body of a young girl in the house. It was not the owner's, but a local girl whose mom was a junkie. Turned out that the mother was pimping her daughter out to the owner. Some local residents knew he was a nonce and set fire to his house, killing him and the girl. That's just sad. I mean, I don't give a crap what happens to a nonce, but the kid, oh man. I am a wound researcher, currently specializing in genetic changes along wound healing phases. Forensics does a lot of research into this, as the progression of a wound reveals a lot about time of death, conditions, etc. Prior to this, I had worked with cadavers and stuff, majored in neuropsych, premed roots, so lots of bloody stuff. I thought that I had a low squeamish index, as I see most stuff as a part of life. Holy crap, these studies I am reviewing right now. Apparently, a lot of people have massive chronic wounds that go untreated for a long time because they're diabetic, and A, don't have the proper vasculature for proper nociceptor function, and B, don't care enough about their bodies. So forensics can help differentiate whether a wound existed prior to death or not, and studies also look at different subpopulations to show wound progression in general, and some studies show graphic pictures to depict this. Seeing a morbidly obese man's leg split open like a wilted banana peel put me off work for a day. I couldn't crop the picture out and I scrapped the paper from consideration because the images comparing injury progression and chronic wound changes post-death were full of the most messed up diabetic wounds. I get that it's not a grisly murder, but I can handle that sort of stuff. I feel empathy for combat wound research I cover, and I don't recoil from any of those cases. Pressure ulcers don't flinch me. But diabetic wounds? I need to get back into brains. I checked some of the examples of wounds that this individual talked about, and yeah, they're all pretty gross. And yeah, the diabetic wounds are pretty damn bad. Worked a burglary one time where the homeowner left in the morning and came back to discover their house had been broken into during the day. Normal things were stolen, electronics, cash, jewelry, etc. But what was left behind is a head scratcher. The burglar took a dump on the toilet seat cover and then covered it nearly with a towel. The victim wanted it collected for DNA processing. Nope. Forensics swabbed it and left it for the homeowners to handle. I gave them some latex gloves and wished them luck. Full disclosure, I'm a cop, not forensics.
Tattoo artists of Reddit. What is your most, are you sure, tattoo you've been asked to do / have done? I actually refused to do this one. An 18-year-old girl came in wanting her boyfriend's name on her lower back. She had never met him. She was his prison pen pal for a month, and he was being released in a couple weeks, and she wanted to get it to surprise him. No judgments on ex-cons or 18-year-old girls, but I got the impression the relationship wasn't going to last. That's not the good kind of surprise. Imagine if you're chatting with a girl on OkCupid, and it's going okay, so you meet up for your first date, and she says she has a surprise for you. So you're thinking, awesome. Did she buy me a gift? Or maybe she wants to show me a cool place when we're walking through the city. Or maybe she just wants to give me a surprise hug, because everyone likes surprise hugs from cute girls. Nope. Turns out she's tattooed your name on her body. I'm the type of person who thinks quote-unquote red flags are typically overreactions because everyone deserves a fair chance. But this right here, this is a real freaking red flag. That's on fire. And someone is waving it frantically while holding a megaphone in their other hand, into which they are screaming, "Run! Run if you want to live! Get the heck out now!" An artist at the local tattoo parlor I go to tattooed a guy's ball sack, all orange with a scary face on it. The guy referred to it as a sack-o'-lantern. Now fellas, we need to talk. You're not going to be able to use this for 11 months out of the year. And for the 1 month you get to use this on, it's for 1 day only. I just got done watching a YouTube video on the worst Christmas gifts of 2022, and some of those gifts were Christmas-themed Christmas gifts. I just want you to think about that before you decide to get something holiday-related permanently tattooed on your body. A guy came in and got his wife's name covered up with the portrait of his new girlfriend. My coworker used part of her shirt in the picture to cover up the name. Then, 2 months later, he turned his now ex-girlfriend's portrait into a demon. I started working at another shop, and in came the same guy with a third girl, and they were getting matching tattoos on their hands. When I walked to the front and saw him, he totally pretended he didn't know me. Dude came in and asked me to tattoo a portrait of his girlfriend. Only, the portrait was a duck-face Snapchat selfie. I jokingly suggested adding her holding the phone, taking the selfie, but he thought it was a great idea. They've only been dating 6 months, and he didn't tell her he was going to get it. He came back a month later to add her name above it. My ex-tattooist, I didn't know that was a thing until now, tried to convince me to get a broken condom with the word "whoops" above it. Obviously, I declined. He ended up tattooing it on his own upper arm with his son's birthday below. Mate had to tattoo a picture of Bill Cosby to a dude's back in the mid-2000s. Poor guy probably regrets that now. Zip zap zoobity bop! Was in booking a tattoo one day, and a woman came in to buy her soon-to-be 16-year-old daughter a tattoo. Owner and tattooist says, "Sure, we can sort something out. What is she wanting?" Mother says she wants to get the Playboy bunny on the inside of her wrist. Artist refused and said, "I don't want to be responsible for something so cliché and visible on such a young girl." There was an argument, but the woman leaves yelling she is going elsewhere where her money is good enough. He had strong views on neck, face, and hand tattoos. Didn't stop him from doing a fast food character orgy on a guy's back, though. I know a lot of tattoo artists who will flat out refuse neck, hand, and face tattoos on a young person if they aren't tatted up already, because that foolish/impulsive tattoo can create some major waves down the line from getting a job to be flat out profiled. And, like a bartender, they ultimately reserve the right to decide whether to do the tattoo or not, just like a bartender doesn't have to serve someone if they aren't comfortable with it. Definitely had many of these. One really great dingling-related one recently. I work at Vic Market Tattoo in Melbourne. If you know the area, you know it's one of the older Melbourne tattoo shops. With that history comes a lot of older customers who ramble on about their experience of getting tattooed here over 20 years ago, which is why they inevitably come back. This older gent, easily in his 80s, comes to the front desk and points me out from way down the back of the shop. I want to talk to that guy. Confused, I meander up to the front to be met with a blush of embarrassment. He stumbles into his request. Now, I'm not here to offend you or to make light of the wonderful work you do, but I do have a strange ask for you, he states. Here's where it gets weird, and I really feel like he could have led with a sentence better than, so I was watching this young chap take a whiz the other day, and he had just the most beautiful bee tattooed on the head of his dingling, and I wanted to request to have the exact same bee tattooed on my dingling. Slightly taken aback and slightly amused, I tell him we can definitely do that, but that there are extra costs involved. Once I told him the price, he almost fell over, didn't respond, and mumbled his way out of the shop. Never will I forget. I was just watching this young chap take a whiz. I tattooed a swear word on a woman's hip. Just the swear word. She still loves it, but it makes me really uncomfortable when I think about her at the beach. I also had a friend want me to tattoo his girlfriend's name in Old English on his arm. I said, no girlfriends. He was mad because I was his friend and should do it. I said that's exactly why I wouldn't do it. If they don't last, I'm still his friend. It's incredibly hard to tell someone you won't do their tattoo because their relationship might not last. Newsflash, he got our competitor to do the tattoo. Breaking news, they aren't together anymore. Another guy, when I first started out, wanted to get the fascist hunter image. It's a cartoon guy clubbing a swastika. Even though it's an anti-racism image, he still would have looked like he had a giant swastika on his chest from 10 feet away and would spend the rest of his life explaining it. I decided to not do the tattoo. Guy came into the shop I work at wanting a cover-up of a previous regrettable tattoo. Pretty normal until he casually mentioned it's on his dingling, and it's a red rocket. None of the dudes on the shop wanted to cover it up or even see it. Only person who stepped up was one of the female artists. She was like, I don't think I have a dingling tattoo for my portfolio, so screw it, let's cover it up. The only possible way to cover it up was to add so much black work, so she freehand drew a tuxedo onto his schlong. Dude ended up with a dapper dingling, and he was happy with it. Weirdest day at work ever. I know this guy who wanted a quote-unquote cutie mark on a guy's butt. A cutie mark is the marking the ponies have on their rear in the My Little Pony series. For everyone wondering what his cutie mark is, I don't remember. It was his own special mark. Last year, while doing a guest spot in Portugal, I had a guy come in while he was on holiday for his stag party. The guy wanted all the names of his friends tattooed on his butt cheeks. 13 names on each cheek, and 3 of his mates wanted to sign their own names. Sure, buddy. Sure. I was a shop girl, so it was my job to get everything set up for the tattoos. I had a couple come in and want each other's names tattooed on them. Okay, no problem. At this shop, we had a rule that anything involving words has to have the person sign a copy of the lettering to make sure everything is spelled correctly. So they write their names down, the artist draws the lettering, and I give them the copies to double-check spelling and sign off on it. The woman looks at the man's name. He wrote down his name to give to the artist and says it's spelled wrong. We double-check, and that's how he spelled it, and he looks at it and says, it's right, and they argue about this. I go back and look at how it is spelled on his ID, and sure enough, it's spelled wrong. So he decides maybe it is spelled wrong, and the artist redraws it. On all his paperwork, he had spelled his name wrong, the way he had written it for the artist. His name is pretty common. I think he just really didn't know how to spell his name. This was a couple in probably their late 20s, early 30s with a few kids together. The guy's name? Jeffrey. We had this lovely exchange student come into the studio for about a year to get all sorts of piercings, and then the day finally came that he turned 18. So he asked to sit down and had a chat with him about what he wanted. Now, the way he asked me made me think that it was going to be this big, elaborate design. He asked for a maths equation on his foot. He wanted 3 + 4 = 8. I cautiously asked that he knew that that was the incorrect answer to the equation. His response was, oh yeah, I know. I just think it'd make a funny tattoo. So yeah, that and another time I tattooed Scooby-Doo and Shaggy on a guy's bum cheeks. A man came into the shop my husband works at on his 18th birthday and got a pentagram with a goat on the front of his throat. First tattoo in a very visible spot that is satanic. I don't know that kid, but I'm pretty sure he's regretting that decision. My husband refused to do this tattoo, but someone else in the shop did. On another note, my white trash biological father had "Let's Screw" tattooed on his hands when he laced his fingers together. I never knew what they said when I was a kid. I finally realized it at his funeral. I'm pretty sure he got it in prison. I've tattooed a guy's current wife's name on him. In the same session, covered up his previous wife's name, and he also showed me another, different previous wife's name he had on him. He didn't want to cover that one though. She must have not been that bad. Okay, that's a lot right off the bat. We also had this couple come in all the time to get tattooed at the first shop I worked at. The guy would come in sometimes with a side girl and buy her tattoos, sometimes with his fiancée. After they were married, his fiancée wanted me to tattoo their wedding date on her wrist. I felt really weird trying to talk her out of it while not feeling like it was my place to tell her about this guy's behavior. I ended up doing it for her, and a year later, she came in to get a red line tattooed through the date. TLDR, don't get names or dates unless they're your kids or dead. One of my dad's friends got a Gary Glitter tattoo back when he was popular, regretting that big portrait of a kitty diddler on his arm now that he is 60. Friend wanted angel wings tattooed on her back and asked me to go since I was the only person she knew with tattoos. We walk into a pretty well-known tattoo shop in LA, and she explains to the artist what she wants. As she explains, it gets even more elaborate with the wings starting to decay the further down her back they went, and the artist shows us some pretty sweet wings he'd done before. He explains how it will be done. He'd do the outline first, and after a few weeks, she could come back and he'd start the detail work. Fast forward to 3 days later, and she's topless lying on his chair/bed, and he's laying a stencil down. He asks her what other tattoos she has besides this one, and she tells him that this will be her first one. Tattoo guy's face drops instantly, and he starts saying how he's going to end up tattooing some of the most painful parts you could tattoo, the ribs mostly. And he asks if she can handle it. She says yes, and after a little more talking, it happened. She cannot take the pain at all. She's crying and gripping the cushion like she's about to die. Artist looks at me and his face reads like, is she really going to do this the entire time? After half an hour of tattooing with the occasional break, he says he can't deal with her screaming in the shop, so he stops. He had probably 10% of the outline done on the right wing. We leave with another appointment set so another person could re-help her with the tattoo and make it something smaller. I didn't go back, but she went with 2 female friends, and from what I heard was another 10 minutes of tattooing, and she had a nice wave outline on her back. I know a girl who tattooed a Wu-Tang W on her upper thigh. Only after she finished and looked in the mirror did she realize that she had done it so that she could see the W, but to everyone else it looks like an M. R/no regrets. During the Twilight craze, a mother brought in her 14-year-old to get vampire bites tattooed on her neck, little holes with blood streaming down. We refused and they got angry. A few years later, I saw that girl in public. She must have gone to a crappy shop. She had 2 quarter-sized black dots with red strings all the way down her stupid neck. Well, my friend recently got tang, the Chinese word for soup, tattooed on his ankle. He'd been planning it for like 3 years. He reportedly did his research to make sure they didn't tattoo, quote, truth or beauty or some other bullcrap. Honestly, if I had the guts, I would get fried rice tattooed on my arm because I love fried rice. There was an 85-year-old woman who came into my tattoo artist shop saying exactly, "How would a freaking skull with freaking daggers and fire?" My artist said, "Heck yeah!" And now she's an 85-year-old grandma with skull and daggers on her chest. I've had 3 tattooists ask me, "Are you sure?" All because of the same tattoo. Long story short, I lost a bet and ended up with a dingling on a surfboard tattooed to my butt. Well, it turns out this is a great conversation starter and always gets a giggle from everyone who sees it. But the tattoo itself isn't great, so I'd like to tidy it up and make it look better and less scratchy. Every single tattooist I've asked has looked at me like I'm crazy. One went as far as to tell me a young woman should not have surfing genitalia on her butt. I tattoo eyebrows specifically. I've had a few clients come in and not know it's a tattoo. I had an older woman come in with her paid deposit and think that I was going to wax her eyebrows. She thought the deposit was the price of waxing eyebrows, $110. I felt terrible. I waxed her eyebrows, showed her how to fill them in with a pencil, and then refunded her deposit. Other than that, there's the usual freak out before starting, so I'll always ask, "Are you sure?" I know a girl with a camel tattooed on one of her toes. It's only an outline, and it's hidden most of the time, but I do wonder what motivated her to have a tattoo with the theme of camel toe. Not a tattoo artist, but the last time I got a tattoo, I overheard the guy in the stall next to mine getting a tattoo of 3 spanners along his forearm. His tattoo artist was asking, why spanners? Like, was he a mechanic or an engineer? Nope, dude was a chef. Maybe he wanted to be a mechanic? Or it was a hobby or something? Nope, dude had always wanted to be a chef and loved his work. Then why the spanners? Turns out, the dude just really likes spanners. Spanner equals wrench, often known as spanner outside of North America. Today I also learned what a wrench was. This has been a very informative topic. She thought that cazzo cancro meant screw cancer in Italian, while it really means dingling cancer. Not a tattoo artist, but my dad has a terrible tattoo on his arm of his and my mum's name. Years ago, she told him to get something around it to make it look a little nicer, and he came back with a dolphin on his pec. She wanted screw it on the inside of her lower lip? I need to know, is that a viable place to put a tattoo? Like, pain notwithstanding, you'd think that having a tattoo on the inside of your lip would be impossible? Like, you're not from Wakanda, that's not gonna work. But I don't know, tattoo artists of YouTube, let me know in the comments if this is a really, really, really stupid idea. My artist had a drunk guy come in that wanted a raw T-bone steak on one pec. Artist told him no, but guy insisted, so artist finally let him make an appointment to come back in a few days when he was sober and talk about it. Dude actually came back and was still insistent that he wanted the steak. Artist told him, okay, he put together some sample art and dude would come back the next day, still thinking this guy would change his mind and not show. But dude comes back the next, and he loves the art that artist shows him. Artist figures, why not? And he does it. I saw the photo of the finished tat in his portfolio. It's exactly as described, just a big photorealistic raw T-bone steak, like what you'd buy in a grocery store. This is a Ron Burgundy moment if I've ever heard one. Not an artist, but when I was in high school, a kid got a 7-Eleven Slurpee tattooed on his inner forearm. He showed it to the guy who owned the 7-Eleven nearby, who was so impressed he gave him free Slurpees for life. Hey, let's go! My 2 best friends got Born to be Wild in black with red flames right above their Johnsons. Now, since they are hardly ever professional snatch punishers, their pubes just mask it. But in college, they would trim and use it as a party trick. It worked. Lots of girls wanted to see it. Maybe like 3 or 4 BJs came from it with the aid of some distilled potato water. But I told the story goes of them getting it done. The 2 dudes, with cleanly shaven pubes, getting Born to be Wild above their Johnsons. And their artist says, I recommend Bad to the Bone. It's funnier. I worked in a tattoo shop for a few months, learning to be a body piercer. The owner was this gruff older guy. Anyway, this girl walks in and wants a tattoo of a daisy on the top of her foot. It was her first tattoo. The owner tried for a good 10 minutes to talk her out of it, explaining how painful it was to get a tattoo there. She basically told him, shut up and do the tattoo, old man. So he did. She got about a half-inch line done before she screamed and kicked him. She started bawling her eyes out about how bad it hurt. She left with nothing but that half-inch line as a trophy to her own stupidity. Not a tattoo artist. I have a friend who got a tattoo of a nightclub name on his butt. It began with the hashtag, and he gets free entry for life. He's the only guy I know who shows his butt to the bouncers, and instead of getting kicked out, he gets let in free. Oh man. My dad and my stepmom got tattoos the day before they got impulsively married in Vegas. My stepmom, she got his last name tattooed on her inner forearm about 3 inches long. My dad got an enormous, full-body portrait of my stepmother in lingerie. It covers his shoulder and almost all of his upper arm. I was about 13 at that point, and I was livid after they came back and showed us their new ink and their rings. At least they're still married now. Distraught dude came in wanting a portrait. I asked to see the reference photo that he wanted to get tattooed. He showed me a bunch of low-resolution webcam shots of this lady from a dating site. I assumed he was trying to impress some online chick he met, so without telling him that was a horrendous idea, I instead said that it wouldn't work due to the low quality of the pictures and the heavy filters she used. Later learned that the pictures were of his ex-wife from her new dating profile. He was having a really hard time getting over her, so I convinced him that this probably wasn't the best way to get over someone. He ended up booking an appointment to get his son's portraits instead, and then didn't show up for the appointment. So, happy ending? I knew a soldier in my unit who wanted Florida tattooed on his chest, where he was born. Tattoo artist put on the stencil, asked him to check it out. He looked in the mirror and declared it was backwards. The artist began to explain how mirrors work, and he quickly responded with, "Look, I can see it's backwards. Just flip it, idiot." So the artist obliged. When he proudly showed off his new tattoo, the amount of laughter that ensued embarrassed him into wearing t-shirts every second of every day for months. However, he redeemed himself by getting the word cavalry tattooed on his back because, I'm sure you guessed, he was in the cavalry at the time. However, he once again screwed it up by getting the word cavalry tattooed on his back, which is a very subtle but very important difference. Both tattoos were big, bold block letters absolutely impossible to cover. Guy was an idiot in front, behind, forwards, and backwards. My friends called me Banana Man in high school. First sentence in and I'm already regretting typing this. Screw it. I had butt-length blonde hair that I manic-panicked totally yellow. When I'd get high, it was often the scene of me with my hair over my face looking like a banana melting into the couch, hence Banana Man. It also made an easy signature that I unfortunately can't draw here, so it stuck. Fast forward a beat and you have me, in the army, no more butt-length hair, drunk on my first Phase 3 outing. I'm feeling homesick and tired of the bullcrap, a typical moody new army recruit. I stumble into, yes, I was stumbling drunk, a tattoo parlor outside of Fort Lee, Virginia, and ask for a Banana Man tattoo. A lady there says she'll do it. Her excuse is she has fantasy items she wants to tattoo. Last month, she got to tattoo a toaster on someone, and now she gets to mark banana off her list. She draws me up a cartoon of a smiling banana half out of its peel, and my drunk butt loves it. Bam! Before I know it, I'm back at the barracks rubbing ointment on my upper arm. Now I'm in my late 30s and have had to explain this dumb freaking tattoo far more times than I'm comfortable with. I've got a few more tattoos now, and I love them all except this dumb, stupid, drunk purchase that I can't get rid of. At least when you drunk buy crap off of Amazon, you get to return it or throw it away. I'd love to cover it up, but it's that perfect size and shape that all my ideas amount to big black dot on the upper arm. I've even gone to a few tattoo parlors and had artists tell me it's either going to be a big black dot or you're going to see some of it. TLDR, don't get a tattoo if you're drunk. And don't trust an artist who's willing to tattoo you if you are drunk. I remember bleeding a lot.
What can kill you easily that people often underestimate?
Staircases. Friend of mine slipped, broke his neck, and died. He was 21. As a kid, I remember trying rollerblades down the stairs. One moment, I'm on the top of the stairs, and the next, I'm waking up at the bottom of the stairs with no memory of having fallen. Only some bruises, and I didn't tell my parents in fear of the slipper. Someone else in the vehicle not having their seatbelt on. If your 150-pound passenger isn't wearing a seatbelt, they turn into an unrestrained 150-pound sack of meat and bone during a collision or rollover. That can definitely mess you up if they smack into you. When I met my husband, he never wore his seatbelt. I'm an easygoing girl who doesn't tell him what to do. Except for that. I said that was a deal breaker. So he wears his seatbelt now. Jump ahead a few years. When my husband and I were test driving his car, I turned around and told the car dealer to put his seatbelt on. He laughed. My husband was like, she's serious. You better put it on. I don't know why this makes me smile. Maybe the look on the dude's face when I lectured him about being a torpedo. I said I could not care less what happens to him, but he will not be killing me or my husband. This is how I feel about all reckless driving. If you want to put your life in danger when you're behind the wheel, do it alone on an empty road. If people want to gamble with their own lives, then fine. That's their prerogative. But they're selfish Fs when they put each other's lives at risk. Water, lakes, pools, etc. People forget how easily their children or themselves can get into trouble while around water. Floating down a lazy river with some beer and friends is, I think, one of the greatest experiences in this life. The most recent time I did this, I drank a lot and then got separated from my group. At some point, I was kicking to get my floaty to shore, and it suddenly occurred to my inebriated self just how much danger I was in. If I slipped off my raft, I gave myself 50-50 odds of being coordinated enough to get out of the water. At best, and there was no one around to help me. I made it, obviously, but I still shudder when I remember that moment. Perhaps the closest I came to death, and I've been hospitalized on multiple occasions. Yep, I'm a pretty strong swimmer, but it's interesting how even 100 meters stretches out when you're not in the pool, or have circumstances like inebriation or rough conditions.
A brief moment of distraction while driving. Just driving in general, you're moving at a high speed in a metal box relying on paint and lights to guide you, while also hoping literally every other driver does the same and doesn't make a mistake. From an emergency medical services point of view, showers, smack, and motorcycles. But the number one cause of injury, according to an overwhelming majority of patients, is not doing anything. Ladders. OSHA posts workplace fatality stats online. Literally every other entry is someone falling to their death from the top of a ladder. The ocean. I live in Australia, and the people from overseas just don't understand how dangerous the ocean can be. Tip for a visitor if you come to Australia, make sure you swim between the flags. That way the lifesavers can keep an eye on you and stop you from getting into trouble. Visited Australia in the summertime a few years back. We went diving on the Great Barrier Reef. Everyone had to wear a jelly suit, full body, one piece, thin wetsuit type of thing, because there are jellyfish so small you can't see and are so powerful they can kill you. Even if you were just swimming, not diving, you had to have this suit on. Back on the boat after our dive, some folks on the boat are swimming and start lowering their toddler into the water to swim. No jelly suit. The boat captain starts freaking and yelling at them to stop. None of them speak English. It was crazy. One of the other passengers ended up translating for them, but I think the fear of the ocean got lost in translation. They didn't seem concerned. The ocean and its inhabitants are no joke. Also, people who are not in good physical shape at all and cannot swim very well in calm waters, thinking they can handle swimming too far out into the ocean because it seems calm enough. I'm from the US and only have experienced East Coast beaches, so nothing compared to Australia. People still underestimate how powerful the ocean really can be everywhere. Tylenol, number one leading cause of acute liver failure in the US. ETA. Tylenol is acetaminophen, also called paracetamol. The limit is 4 grams per day. That's just 8 extra-strength Tylenol pills. Other drivers, especially the drunk ones. The amount of children who are now orphans because someone decided to drink and drive is very depressing. Blood clots can form in your legs due to inactivity and then travel to your lungs, which is fatal. Can confirm. Was a fairly active 24-year-old college student when I was on bed rest for multiple surgeries. Ended up getting a pulmonary embolism and being put on warfarin for over a year. Best part was when I went into a walk-in clinic complaining of pain of an 11 out of 10 in my chest, and the doctor said I had acid reflux and I had to beg him to x-ray me. Still think back about how easily I could have died if I didn't insist on more tests. If this video is making you feel a general sense of nervousness, dread, and stress at the frailty of life, don't worry, that is happening to the scriptwriter, narrator, and editor of this video as well. Cars. I babysit and nanny for 2 different families, and all of the kids have said their parents let them not wear their seatbelts. And I'm like, what the frick, you could die. You will wear your seatbelt in my car, and I won't move until you do. Alcohol withdrawals. They are some of the worst withdrawals you can put your body through, and in some cases it's worse than smack withdrawals. A lot of substances can just cold turkey off, but I'd recommend weaning off alcohol slowly just so you don't shock your body so hard. This more applies to hardcore alcoholics and not so much to your occasional drinkers. I never knew this until 6 months ago. My dad is an alcoholic. Mum calls me up saying that he's firing his gun in the garage. I race over and convince him after 2 hours to get in the car. Take him to the hospital, and upon release, doctor says if and when he decides to turn his life around, do not stop drinking cold turkey. It will kill him. Alcoholic here. I've gone through withdrawal numerous times, and even then I don't think I've approached delirium tremens more than 3 or 4 times. You know that feeling when you hold your breath for too long, and your body is just going, fricking breathe, we need it. That's what it feels like when you're withdrawing from alcohol, except it's all over your body and there's nothing you can do but ride it out. It tends to come on anywhere from 8 to 12 hours after your last drink, and peaks around 12 to 14 hours after. I've read if you can make it 24 hours, your chances of having a seizure at all fall dramatically. If you've timed it wrong, you withdraw at night. Forget sleep. You're going to toss, turn, sweat, and if you're really unfortunate, you'll nod off a little and borderline hallucinate. It's not something I'd recommend. I'd say nighttime is the wrong time for it because, at least in my experience, if you can do it during a busy day, then you at least have crap to do that can distract you. The scariest thing is going through all of this knowing this might be the one that kills you. It's no secret that alcohol withdrawals can kill, at least among alcoholics. You lie on your bed and sweat, wondering if you'll finally have the seizure that sends you to rehab. Take it easy on the booze, folks. It's literally poison.
Automatic garage door opener springs. Do not try and fix or replace them on your own. They're deadly.
I can vouch for this. Not the deadly aspect, but the more dangerous than you realize, especially while standing on a ladder aspect. Lesson learned. Garage doors are seriously heavy, and those springs make it seem feather light. There's a crap ton of potential energy in them, and unleashing all of it at once is violent. I've heard that they can embed themselves in walls. Garage door springs are very high on my things to absolutely never F with list, higher than angle grinders and snapping turtles.
Being knocked unconscious for too long is super bad for you. It's a lot shorter period than you'd think to get deadly.
Some historians theorize that this is what caused Henry VIII to become so unstable. His horse literally flipped on top of him and he stopped breathing for a bit, was unconscious for a few days afterwards. He was very intelligent and a great leader before it, and ended up becoming super paranoid and violent afterwards.
Stairs, especially for the 60-plus people, but anyone at any age can fall down stairs. Then they're in debt because of the medical bill and sometimes paralyzed, or your neck gets crunched and you die.
This happened a couple of months ago. My sister-in-law's family had a family friend visiting them out of state for a couple of days. They said he would make comments about how steep their stairs were and that someone could easily die falling down them. Well, one night they heard a loud crashing noise and they found the guy unresponsive at the bottom of the steps. Was pronounced dead at the scene when the paramedics arrived.
I kinda half-assed making sure both ways were clear before I crossed the road the other day. Then I suddenly realized that even though I do it every day, so it's monotonous and seems like no big deal, not looking both ways is the difference between getting across the road safely and getting hit and killed by a car on the way back from buying a can of Pringles.
The narrator can confirm that once in a state of exhausted delirium after an all-nighter finishing an essay, he was struck a glancing blow by a car when he didn't check both ways on the road. Easy, deadly mistake to make, folks. Easter flowers. They've been known to kill dogs and small children. Highly toxic. I had a dog that ate one and I had no idea they were poisonous. Few minutes down the road and he started projectile crapping and puking in a circle. I thought he was going to die. It only takes a few for a human to ingest and it'll kill you. Those stupid yellow flowers people plant everywhere.
Tulips, narcissus, and I assume daffodils, or maybe that's the same thing, and calla lilies will kill your animals and also you. I think irises are also on the no-no list. I'm glad your dog was okay.
Crowds. The closest I ever came to death was being about 10 feet from the stage at Lollapalooza 94 when the Beastie Boys came on. Parliament Funkadelic was on right before them, and everyone was just dancing, nobody was rushing the stage. The Beastie Boys banner dropped, and I turned around to several thousand people running at me at full speed. I got caught in the pit, and I'm a small person. I was immediately pushed away from my friends. The Beastie Boys were actually yelling at the crowd, telling them that the ladies had as much right to be up front as the guys, look out for friends, etc. People were grabbing my hair and my clothes to stay up, because almost everyone around me was a shirtless guy and pretty slippery with sweat. All the air was up around 6 feet off the ground and I'm a whopping 5'3". Some very aware and awesome strangers noticed I was about to pass out and was only upright because I was being held up by the crush of people around me, and they passed me overhead to the security guys on stage. I easily could have died in that crowd.
This is so true. I have a huge respect for folks who watch out for people around them in the crowd at live events. I was once knocked unconscious for a moment by an accidental elbow to the head from a dude next to me, and then came to my senses and realized someone was holding me by the armpits, not letting me fall. And I'm not exactly a small guy. If not for this stranger, I could have easily been trampled and injured seriously. So stay aware in the crowd, folks, for yourself and others.
Deer. Stupid, paranoid murder machines with knives on their heads. Most animals will kill you for a reason, or to eat you, but not a deer. Fricking deer. Not only are they psychotic during mating season, but if you hit a buck in your car, the antlers can impale you if they come through your windshield. They are a lot bigger up close than most people realize. I've always found them kind of intimidating. A short fall. A friend fell from about 3 feet and landed on his head. You're still missed. Carrying a bunch of junk in your car. If you wreck, that crap will hurt and or kill you. A bag of canned dog food almost got me. Some diseases that are vaccinated for, such as measles and pertussis, whooping cough, are much more dangerous and carry a higher risk of deadly complications in infants and very young children than in older children and adults. This is one reason why the herd immunity avoided by widespread vaccination is so crucial. Infants cannot be vaccinated against such diseases, but their risk of contracting them can be greatly reduced by those around them being inoculated. Selfies in dangerous locations. I keep an eye on the Wikipedia list of death by selfie. In Nabarangpur, Odisha, India, a man tried to take a selfie with a wounded bear and was mauled to death. Good stuff. I live in an area with a lot of touristy spots near beaches, and some guy died because he was trying to get a selfie over a blowhole. Not next to, over, as in he stood on top of it hoping to somehow get a good pic of it blowing under him? Don't know the logic behind that, but yeah, he got blown off, obviously, into the water and got swept out to sea, all for the selfie. Somehow it feels okay to chuckle about people dying for the perfect selfie. Obviously it's a huge tragedy, but death resulting from trying to prove you're living in the moment feels oddly poignant. A single punch. It takes disturbingly little effort to kill a human. We are incredibly durable in most ways, but a solid punch to the throat or temple could easily kill on accident. Don't forget the chest. If you bop someone in the right place at the right time, off goes the heart. There was a youth lacrosse player a few years back that was working on his shot. One of his shots hit the crossbar and came back and hit him in the chest at the exact right time and killed him. There was also a minor league hockey player that died from a puck to the chest. The woods. People without much survival knowledge don't seem to realize that nature doesn't give an F about you. The weather, the wilds, the animals, all will kill you as soon as you mess up. I used to teach a wilderness survival course at a scout camp. Eagle Scout represent. A knowledge of how lethal mostly everything in the wilderness is sobering. Drink bad water, get the projectile craps and vomits, and die of dehydration. Eat bad food, or hell, just put food in your body that it's not used to, get the projectile craps, vomits, and die of dehydration. Get wet and stay wet, even in the middle of summer, probably develop hypothermia once the sun sets. Get an open wound, cut, or scrape, it's gonna get infected. Annoy a wild animal, get attacked. And it doesn't even have to be a big traditional predator like a wolf or bear. One kid at the scout camp had to be rushed to the hospital because he and friends cornered a raccoon and was annoying it. Another scout in a different troop got too close to a tom turkey and got mauled. So on and so forth. Yes, I love the woods and I spend quite a bit of time in them, but that means I have a healthy respect for what it can do, and I am prepared. Brain aneurysm. Can happen anytime. You can be the healthiest man in the world and take care of your body all the time and still die from one. And alligators. Eat my eggplant, jungle. Often, alligators paired with brain aneurysms, though the correlation has not been clearly established. Hippos. They may look like harmless, friendly giants, but if you get too close to them, they will absolutely mess you up. Giving birth. Just because we've been doing it for millions of years doesn't mean it won't kill you. Food. Plain and simple. Between unknown allergies, choking, foodborne illnesses, overeating, and a plethora of other possibilities, food is the silent killer that no one expected. Cows. Cows? Cows. They kill more people than sharks. How does a cow kill a shark? Thank you, commenters. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for that little exchange in this dark topic. This is dark, but depression. A lot of people think it's not as bad as it is, and it can get pretty bad. Not depressed anymore, but it was pretty bad, and your brain being so chemically ill, it will tell you things that you would really wonder how you believed it when you're not struggling anymore. This is very true. There's nothing worse than feeling worthless, even when you're surrounded by people who say otherwise. There's nothing worse than losing all enthusiasm for your passions. There's nothing worse than wanting to sleep so you can avoid the waking world. I've lost friends and family to depression. I suffer from it myself, and it's the only problem I can't seem to solve. One of my favorite descriptions of what depression and suicidal tendencies is like is something along the lines of, depression is like being in an upper floor of a burning building. Each day the flames rise up another floor. Some days the firefighters are able to bring the flames down, and other days the flames jump 10 floors. Eventually it gets to the point where the pain of jumping out of your window is less than the pain and effort of continuing to fight the flames. My therapist quoted someone who I can't remember now, but it was something like the above. David Foster Wallace from the novel Infinite Jest. Swimming in lakes, because there's amoeba and bacteria that can kill you if you have any open wounds or if it gets in your mouth and eyes. Brain-eating amoeba or Naegleria fowleri. It's found in drinking water too. Not living in an area where they're common? I think the greatest danger to me would be the mother fricker who's leaving scorpions in my shower. Fricking everything. Yourself. Between the ages of 10 and 34, taking one's own life is the second most common cause of death, second only to unintentional injury. On average in the US, there are 121 such incidents per day, and the rates in LGBTQ communities are 3 times higher than the national average. Be kind to yourself, people. Emus and cassowaries. Something emu war. Darn, foiled again. I mean, they're giant velociraptors. Who can blame them? Running in front of a train. Seriously, I see people do this a few times a month on my way back to work. If the arm is down, don't run, especially when there's more than 2 tracks. Nobody bothers to look down the freight train tracks. In South Florida, we just got a new passenger train running at 79 miles per hour, on tracks that formerly only had nighttime freight trains at 55 miles per hour. Current score is 7-0, with the passenger train winning against idiot pedestrians. Horses and horseback riding. Even decades-long experienced riders die from injury and accidents. It's not just the ones new to horses and the sport. A coach I had lost her husband in a barrel racing competition from injuries after a bad fall. I myself have fallen off and was stomped on by accident when the horse got upset in a storm. My spleen almost ruptured and I was off work for 3 weeks. They're large 1,200-pound squirrels that can and will spook at the most unexpected crap because it's hardwired into their instincts as prey animals. People don't understand that horses communicate with a lot of subtle physical clues that will let you know a few minutes in advance before it acts out of fear and or self-defense of itself or its herdmates and offspring. I'm constantly watching ears, eyes, hoofs, and leg positions, tail activity, facial expressions, and body posture when I'm grooming one of the horses. Both for changes in mood and because I know I'm doing my job right when grooming if the horse is truly relaxed and happy around me. Working with the horses I do and riding has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I love the animals I work with and care for, but I do not drop my guard when it comes to safety. Not only for myself, but also for the other barn girls and the horses. I would be devastated if someone suffered from something careless that I did. In conclusion, leave unfamiliar horses alone and never work around them without safety for yourself and the animals in mind.
Men, what's the most creepy thing a woman has ever done to you? Enraged in the middle of the argument, she took my fish out of the aquarium and threatened to step on it. I saved the little guy. It was a beta, if you want to know. Takes anger out on small creatures. That right there, my friend, is a red flag. Cut off all of her pubic hair, put them in between layers of scotch tape, crammed them in an envelope with a pair of her used panties, and put the envelope under my windshield wiper. There was a note that read something like, "I know we can't be together, but now you'll always remember me." She was right. It's already been stated what she was trying to accomplish. I just can't fathom as to why she came up with that. Probably not as exciting as most here, but still super frickin' weird. I was staying at my friend's house, sleeping in his guest room. Friend is at work, his girlfriend is at home. One thing about this room is that it has a very heavy door that has to be held open by something super heavy or else it slams shut. Well, I sleep with the door closed. I wake up in the morning, and as I do every morning, I laid there for a bit longer before actually getting out of bed. Well, this time, all of a sudden, I see the door open, the light is still off, but the hallway light being on means I can see if someone's standing in the doorway. I have my eyes kind of opened and I can see that she's just standing there in the doorway, staring at me. I didn't move. I wanted to see what the hell would happen because this was thoroughly freaking me out. She just stood there for at least 10 minutes, didn't look away, didn't walk around the room. I was laying at a weird angle where I could see her perfectly. She could see me, but she couldn't see that my eyes were half open. I thought she may have been in there to grab something because there's a bunch of stuff in the closet, clothes and such. Nope. 10 minutes I waited for her to do something or to walk out. Finally, I flinched and feigned waking up and I heard her run out and slam the door. I got up, went to the kitchen, and she was as bubbly as could be, acting like nothing happened. Acting like she didn't just spend 10 minutes watching me sleep. I kind of think if you were just laying there watching her, watching you for like 10 minutes, if that was even as long as it happened for, I think you were hoping for something to happen. I would have just said, "Hey, why are you staring at me? Can I help you? Do you want something?" Dated this girl who I later found out to be literally a compulsive liar and also into witchcraft. After not being able to deal with her insanity anymore, I broke things off. She would wait outside my door for God knows how long until I came home and say she left something at my house. This happened a lot. One day, I was going to add a new email account to my phone and realized that her email account was still saved on my phone. I shouldn't have checked it, but she was actively stalking me and I needed to know what I was up against. There were tons of emails to some witchcraft lady she found online somehow. All about me. She was paying this internet witch like hundreds of dollars an hour for what I would consider witch consulting. It was all about me. How to cast spells to get me back, how to enchant me, how to curse my new GF, all kinds of crazy crap. She was using this lady as like a weird therapist almost, asking her a bunch of relationship questions too. This went on for months. The witch lady was getting a little annoyed at her, I could feel, although she couldn't complain that much because she was draining her for literally thousands of dollars. She told the witch that at some point I told her that she needs to seek professional help. The witch actually told her that might not be a bad idea. She ended up moving into the house of a mutual friend, this girl from school that was literally one building away from mine. My friend told me that she was always burning weird spices and candles. It was at the direction of the witch, actually. It was creepy as hell, and eventually she cut my brakes. I'm reminded of this time I saw that some witches were trying to spiritually take down Allah or something and needed like a lot of witch power to be able to defeat him. Because, Allah is just so spiritually powerful, you need as many witches as you can get. But also, yeah, she pretty cray-cray. I fell asleep sitting next to one of my friends on the way home from a school trip in 12th grade. I woke up to her using my hand to play with herself. As I began to regain consciousness, she threw my hand at me and made a huge scene about it. I never talked to her about it. It bothers me to this day. Definitely top 3. Say what? That's gotta be considered assault on some degree. What the figgity yuck? Girl I had seen for 2 dates had her best friend SMS me anonymously claiming we went in a bar the night before and offering to come over to my place. I rarely went to bars as I worked night shift at the time, so I knew I hadn't met anyone at a bar. Eventually, after probing and pushing, I got the girl to confess. She said she was just testing to make sure I was trustworthy. Didn't see her again. I understand the need, the want, the desire for a trustworthy man in your life, but goddamn, there are better ways to go about it than that. Smarter ways, even. Met a girl at a bar and we ended up back at her place. We fooled around and fell asleep. She seemed normal all night and I saw no red flags at all. I definitely would have dated her again, until she went crazy. I woke up at around 5 a.m. and started getting dressed to leave. I had to get home and get ready for work. She woke up while I was dressing and totally freaked out. She was screaming angrily, "You can't leave!" I explained I needed to go to work and that I'd call her later. She was having none of that. Then she attacked. I literally had to physically fight my way out of her apartment with a few scratches on my arm for souvenirs. I have no idea what her deal was, and I never went back to the bar I met her in. What's the problem, girl? He said he'd call you back. I mean, I guess there's a chance that he's lying, but, what the hell? This happened to a buddy of mine, except she threatened to call the police and say that he raped her if he didn't stay. He nervously left the apartment. She called the cops and pressed charges. He lost his job, his sanity, everything. She eventually admitted nothing happened, yet his life was already crumbled into pieces and his reputation ruined. She never suffered any consequences. Be careful out there. It's sad but true, yeah. Some women will do you like that. A girl broke into my house 3 times in a week while I was rehearsing, Celeste. Each time she left money to repair the window, a large bag of Twizzlers, and 2 cans of tuna for my cat. That was it. We had never been romantically or physically involved. We barely even knew each other. This oddly sounds to me like the modern version of the humble beginnings of a festive or cultural celebration of some sort. Once a year, around the globe, women break into men's apartments and leave Twizzlers and cat food, whether they have a cat or not. That'd be crazy. Really drunk chick asked me to dance and proceeded to keep trying to pull my willy out, like forcefully. When I'd finally resisted enough, she called me a nerd and stormed off. You're not a nerd, buddy. You're a survivor. I was probably 9. It was after church service and there's this new lady there who took a liking to me. She was the new wife of the minister. We were outside waiting for the grown-ups to come out. I think they were having a meeting inside. And this new lady took me to a bench nearby. We sat, asked me lots of questions. Then she put my head on her lap, stroked my hair while humming a lullaby like I'm a baby. It felt really uncomfortable and I really wanted to escape. But I was a shy little boy and didn't want to offend her or something. So my my sister from afar snickering at us. It went on like this for 30 minutes, but felt like hours. I was dying with cringe inside. If I were that child's sister, there'd be a point if it really went on for 30 minutes, which I highly doubt this woman sat there on a bench and stroked this random child's head for 30 minutes unless she really is a little bit unstable. But there'd be a point where you're kinda concerned, right? Weird. I had a similar experience when I was younger that your story made me rethink. I lived in a neighborhood with middle-class housing. I had a friend whose parents were divorced, so his mother lived right down the street from me, and when he wasn't with his father in Hawaii, he was with her. So I was young, like 10 or 11 years old. My friend was with his father at the time, so he was not there. I was walking home, and when I was walking past his house, his mother was outside sitting in front of her garage smoking a cigarette. It was odd since we never really spoke other than standard pleasantries. I was respectful, as you should be. She made me sit on her lap while she talked, and she, for whatever reason, kissed my cheek multiple times with her arm around me. I know, sounds hentai AF, but I can assure you this happened. I can't for the life of me remember what she was saying since I was a kid that was only focused on getting home. She had red lipstick on, which was now on my skin, of course. Moving along, after a while, she let me go and I walked home where my mom prepared me a bath. She asked me about the lipstick and I told her what happened. She didn't react much, but thinking in hindsight, she may have freaked out. Nothing happened after that, and I was a very optimistic child who didn't think much of it. I think that she was lonely without her son. She lived alone and I don't recall her having visitors. Just thinking as a parent in 2020, having your 10-year-old son come home with lipstick on his cheek would be a huge yikes. Yeah, that one's just a tad bit sketchy in my opinion. Met a girl at a party. We flirted, then we ended up in my bedroom. This was in my apartment. Heavy makeout. I suggest having intercourse. She declines. Heavier making out, basically including anything that's not intercourse. I suggest having intercourse again. She declines. Fair enough. We stopped the making out and planned to see each other again. The day we were supposed to meet, she stood me up. I had cooked and it was already time to meet. She told me that she doesn't want to see me again because I wasn't pushy enough. She liked men who are less soft and gentle. She basically told me that when she said no, I shouldn't have listened. Good riddance, I say. I don't care if a woman means yes when she says no. I take out a dictionary and I show her the meaning of no because that's what she said. Plus, in this day and age, how can you not be absolutely paranoid all the time that people are recording conversations to use in future courts of law or something? Keep in mind I'm only a junior in high school. I was about in 7th or 8th grade and I was at a New Year's party at my grandparents' house with all of their friends. You can tell I'm a party animal spending my New Year's with 60 and 70-year-olds, and one of their friends who I'd known for a while continued touching me and grabbing me in my waist and thigh region. She would sneak it in under the table or walking past each other or whatever. I totally understand the stereotypical grandma cheek pinch or whatever, but this was something else. After squeezing my butt with both hands, I had enough and said something to her. The rest of the night was super awkward, but the worst part was my grandma was defending her and downplaying the whole situation. It wasn't until I told my mom the next day she lost her temper on my grandma that she finally admitted she was wrong, and I haven't seen her since. For clarification, the person they haven't seen since is the groper. Well, here goes. I'm in high school and we're having PE. A girl that I hardly know asks me, "Hey, you want to see my butt?" And I say, no. She then proceeds to pull her whole pants down right in front of 30-odd students and the PE teacher. Everyone was just like, WTF, and she just pulls him back up and walks away like nothing happened. Someone I worked with sniffed the inside of my jacket that I forgot to bring with me. Later, she gave me a date with her as a wedding gift, only to be used before the wedding, and asked me if I was truly happy on my wedding day. Some people really do choose to strike at the worst or weirdest times, don't they? Older woman was cutting my hair. She was 60, I was about 24. She rambled on about how she loves bearded men and I might be old, but I can still look at the menu. She then told me about how she likes to go to clubs with her son in his 40s because she's his wingman and likes younger men. While this was happening, she kept running her hands down the front of my shirt. I later brought it up to the other employees there, who just laughed it off and said, "Oh yeah, that's just her. Apparently sexual assault is just part of her personality." The compliments didn't bother me too much until she started getting handsy. I'm fine with a bit of light flirting, but I'll admit if I had to sit through an entire haircut with this woman, I'd probably be like, you know what? I'm gonna go to a different chair. Woman I was engaged to was doing all the prep for the wedding. This was in her country and I didn't understand the language all that well, so I was a bit limited on how much I could help her out, other than helping to cut the invite cards out, etc. She was a very hot-tempered person as she was, but as much as I asked her what tasks I could help out with, she just refused to involve me in anything at all, and then complained that I wasn't helping enough. She argued and argued with me about how I didn't care despite my efforts to be involved in all the prep. It was all very manipulative. Eventually, she actually pulled a knife out at me. I slapped it off her wrist and she stormed off. When she left for work the next day, I packed my bags, took a taxi to the airport, and noped out of there. I'm picturing this woman coming back from work and being like, "Why has my fiancé left me? It couldn't possibly be because I pulled a knife on him." Wearing my sports jacket when I went to grab a fast food order, some woman I've never seen before shouted hi and waved at me like we were best friends, gave an awkward, confused wave back and left with my food. A couple hours later, I get a friend request on Facebook from someone I recognized as her. Best guess is she saw my jacket and stalked the sports roster to find my name and added me from that. Got blocked real quick. That or on a first date, she asked, "If you were going to kill me, how would you do it? I know how I would kill you." Then proceeded to tell me her plan on how she would kill me and get away with it. I don't know, sounds kinda hot if you ask me.
Oh yeah, baby, why don't you tell me again how you're gonna murder me in my sleep and get away with it?
Asked me if I had feelings for her the day before her wedding, which I was in. Then after being married insisted that we talk, and was trying to sit on my lap at a party when we were both drunk, and I told her it could wait until the morning. She revealed in the morning that she had cut herself after I wouldn't talk with her. I told her we couldn't be friends, and she texted me every day for 6 months without me responding until I learned how to block her number. A mutual friend told me she asked for my number from him this last summer. I haven't spoken to her for 10 years, so there's that. This woman is either down bad or she wants problems all the time. Back when I was working overnights at a national pharmacy chain, there was an older lady in her 50s that would pick up prescriptions and try to hit on me a few times. The most direct and creepiest thing she said to me was, "I don't know why women who go for younger men are called cougars. I like to be called a python because I like to ensnare young men. Do you like pythons?" Luckily, I was saved by a customer that promptly needed something picked up, and I ignored her until she left. I don't know why this just reminded me of an interaction I had at a bar where this older woman approached me, started talking to me, went, "Oh, drinking on a school night, are we, young man?" And I looked her dead in the eye and went, "Madam, I am 25 years old. I haven't been to school in like 7 years." When I was 17 eating a slice of pizza in a pizzeria in New York, I was sitting facing the glass looking out to the street. Time was around 7 p.m. It was getting dark. I'll never forget this 50-something-year-old lady was walking on the sidewalk, saw me eating, slowed down, stared straight at me with the most seductive grin and then winked. Then continued on walking. Until that point in my life, I had never felt so many emotions at once. I was turned on, weirded out, intrigued, scared. This was a day I will never forget. She had black hair and was pretty hot. This one's rather nice, no invasion of someone's personal space or anything like that, just a little smile and a wink. I had a girlfriend once that was really possessive, to the point of stalker behavior. We had been dating for maybe 3 months and she didn't have a life. She never did anything and always wanted to spend time with me, and I was a fairly busy person. It gets to the point where she doesn't believe that I could have so much going on in my life that I can't video call her for at least an hour at the start and end of every single day. If I wasn't replying to her messages within 5 minutes, she'd send about 7 more, then call me a few times. Then it got to the point that she looked at all my social profiles to see when I was last online to see whether I should have seen her texts or not. Also, within 2 weeks, she had planned our wedding and named our 4 children Max, Harrison, Lily, and Sophia. Went downtown to CVS to get my dad's medication at like 9 at night. While waiting for the cashier to come back, 2 old women in line made conversation with me. Unprompted, they started feeling on my shoulders and arms. Pulled the "I have a girlfriend" lie while trying to be nice so no trouble would happen. Inside, I was extremely creeped out. As if she had a sixth sense, the cashier reappeared out of nowhere so I could pay and leave, giving the 2 women a glare in the meantime. They gave my biceps a squeeze before leaving me alone. Felt so dirty. I took a shower after I got home. Next time I saw that cashier, I thanked her. "No problem," she said. Gave her a tip. For those asking, no, nothing progressed. The cashier had an engagement ring on her finger. Was some people hoping for a surprise love story? Maybe not the worst, but here's something. I was in a really low mental state due to some past trauma and recent health issues when we started dating, which I think was part of the appeal for her. Since looking back, the whole thing was very predatory. Iffy age gap, 24M and 32F. She started talking shared finances just a month or so into the dating. It's pretty obvious what she was about in hindsight. Anyway, she encouraged me to start keeping a journal to help with my mental recovery. What a twist. For the journal, she would ask questions and I would write answers to them, which she would read. Most of it was extremely personal. A good amount also sensitive, sexual information. I too am boggled that I went along with this. She was also doing classic abuser things, trying to cut me off from my best friends and all. Fortunately, it only took a few months for me to start seeing clearly, though I wasn't quite committed to breaking up. She must have sensed some resistance though. One day she asked for my journal, set it aside, then proceeded to start the breakup talk. I agreed that it wasn't working out for me either, and overall it was very amicable until I asked for my journal back, literally instant screaming that it belonged to her. I just stayed seated and kept repeating that she hadn't written a thing in it and I was the one who originally purchased it. She tossed it at me after a bit and I bounced out of there like a bat out of hell. She did send an apology about it over social media private messaging some years later, but it was also while letting me know that she would be attending kink meetups in my city though, so yeah, I gotta agree that entire relationship sounded sus as all get out.
Was at work late upgrading PCs to Windows 10. I'm happily married and had only recently gotten married at the time. While I was in the contact center upgrading multiple PCs, I was kind of cornered by a young woman who wound up saying, "If you ever need a release from your wife, I'm here and more than happy to, mess around or something. I think you're super attractive." And it kept going for a few minutes. I mentioned that I'm happily married with no intentions of cheating and she kind of pushed for a while longer, lingered while I kept working, and then eventually left. It was probably the most awkward 20 minutes I have ever sat through at work.
Hey, some women can't take no for an answer, and some of those women have never learned that patience is a virtue. But hey, good on you for not cheating on your wife. While I was at a rave, I had this girl walk up to me like the living dead while I was in a conversation with a bunch of people. This jaw swinger stops dead in front of me and says, "What's that?" and proceeds to grab me by the banger and beans with all the strength a turned-up 20-year-old can muster. I told her to get her frickin' hands off my junk and she scuttled away like Gollum being separated from his precious. About 10 minutes later, a friend taps me on the shoulder, points behind me, looking concerned, and tells me to look. There are 3 cops with a canine and a crying, crazy harlot claiming I tried to grape her. They were ready to frickin' destroy me without so much as a hint of proof. If I wasn't with so many people all night, most of which were young ladies there to back my story up, well, I'm pretty sure that nutbag could have ruined my life very easily. So, suddenly and inappropriately grabs a man by his banger and beans and then proceeds to accuse him of grape? What a cow. Played an MMO for a while where you could join 5 guilds. This lady was in 3 of them, was always nice but very flirty with me. Our guilds used TeamSpeak a lot and the 2 of us got to talking. Turns out though, we lived a few hundred miles and an international border away. We shared a crap ton of interests. She claimed to be in her 20s. I was over 30 at the time. We became friends, though she made it very clear to everyone that she wanted more. In fact, she referred to me as her nickname I went by in that game, and I found out that she was going to be traveling to an area near me right around my birthday. So I offered to meet her in a public setting. That's when she dropped it on me. She wasn't really in her 20s, she was turning 16. Technically over the age of consent, but yeah, still a kid. Even if there weren't legal issues, I simply was not interested in dating anyone that young. I have a 5-year rule. I only date people that are within 5 years of me. So I had a long talk with her. I explained to her that I was damn near twice her age, and while her interest in me was flattering, I wasn't interested. She was devastated, crying, telling me I was making a mistake because she would be the best girlfriend/future wife possible. That age was just a number. Finally, I told her that in 2 years when she turned 18 and brought proof of that, I would consider going on a single date with her if she was really that serious, and that if all went well, I would consider making an exception to my 5-year rule. But under absolutely no circumstances would I ever date or even meet with someone that was under 18. She wasn't happy, but eventually accepted that was the best she would get, and we stayed in touch even after I left the game. Fast forward almost but not quite 2 years, she has finally found a boyfriend. She hits me up on TeamSpeak. She wants me to travel up there to meet them because in her words, she wants me to know exactly what the hell I missed out on by unfairly and unreasonably turning her down. Age is just a number and shouldn't have gotten in the way. She has since become more normal, but yeah, those two incidents really creeped me out. No, I have never dated her. I had dated other women I had met in games before then, never have since. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, potential neckbeard and World of Warcraft player. I don't know if you can join 5 guilds in World of Warcraft. If anyone can guess what the game he was playing was, I'd love to know. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.